The boardroom doors slammed open. Claire Montgomery stood in the doorway, still wearing last night's gown, her hair disheveled, mascara smudged beneath fierce eyes. Behind her, a mechanic in grease-stained jeans looked equally out of place among the marble and mahogany. "You thought I wouldn't find out?" Her voice cut through the stunned silence like a blade. The chairman's face went white. Around the table, 12 board members froze, some guilty, some confused, all terrified. She'd been gone less than 48 hours, and they'd already tried to steal everything she'd built. Big mistake. If you want to see how a single mother CEO takes down a corporate empire from the inside, stick around until the end. And hey, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's get into it. Daniel Brooks wiped the oil from his hands with a rag that had seen better days, probably around the same time his toolbox was new, which was never. The fluorescent lights in his garage buzzed overhead, that annoying flicker in the third one from the left that he kept meaning to replace but never got around to. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Friday, which meant he had exactly 13 minutes before he needed to pick up Emma from soccer practice. Come on, he muttered, tightening the last bolt on Mrs. Chen's ancient Honda Civic. The thing was older than some of his employees would be if he had employees, which he didn't. Just him, his tools, and a steady stream of neighborhood cars that refused to die. The bell above the door chimed. Daniel didn't look up. "We're closed. Come back Monday." "I need your help." He paused. The voice was young, female, and had that particular quality of someone trying very hard to sound confident while being absolutely terrified. Daniel knew that tone. He'd used it himself the day Emma was born, when the doctor placed a screaming, purple-faced human into his arms and said, "Congratulations, Dad," like Daniel had any idea what to do next. He straightened up, wiping his hands again, same rag, same futility, and looked at the woman standing in his doorway. She was maybe 28, 30 tops. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had come partially loose. Jeans and a plain white t-shirt that probably cost more than his rent, though he wouldn't know designer clothes if they came with instruction manuals. What struck him wasn't her appearance, but her eyes, dark brown and currently doing a terrible job of hiding panic. "Like I said, we're closed. Emergency repair?" "No." She stepped further into the garage, and Daniel noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "I need you to be my date this weekend." Daniel blinked, then blinked again. "I'm sorry, what?" "I know how that sounds." She spoke quickly now, words tumbling over each other. "I know this is completely insane, and I'm a stranger, and this is probably the weirdest thing that's happened to you all week." "All year," Daniel interjected. "But I'm desperate, and I saw your garage, and you seem normal, and I really need someone to go to a party with me tomorrow night." Daniel set down his wrench and gave her his full attention. "Okay, let's back up. You want me, a mechanic you've never met, to be your date to a party? An engagement party. Even better. I'll pay you." "I'm not a prostitute." Her face went red. "That's not... I didn't mean... God, I'm terrible at this." She took a breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "My ex-boyfriend is getting engaged to my former best friend, and every single person I know will be at that party tomorrow night, and if I show up alone, it will be the most pathetic moment of my entire life. So take a friend. I don't have friends who don't know them. Take a coworker." Something flickered across her face. "That's complicated." Daniel studied her. His bullshit detector was pretty well calibrated after years of customers claiming they had no idea why their engine exploded after ignoring the check engine light for 6 months. This woman was hiding something, but the desperation seemed genuine. "Lady, Claire. Claire, I have a 7-year-old daughter who I need to pick up from soccer practice in about 8 minutes. I don't go to fancy parties, I don't own a suit, and I definitely don't pretend to be someone's boyfriend for money." He grabbed his jacket from the hook. "So I'm going to have to pass." He was halfway to the door when she spoke again. "Please." It was barely a whisper, but it stopped him cold. Because it wasn't the pleas of someone trying to get their way. It was the pleas of someone drowning. Daniel turned around. Claire was still standing in the middle of his garage, and suddenly she looked very young and very alone. "Why me?" he asked. She gave a small, helpless shrug. Because you're the first person I've talked to in 3 days who doesn't want anything from me. Well, shit. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, which probably just redistributed the grease. Emma was going to kill him if he was late again. Coach Martinez was going to give him that look, and he was definitely going to regret this. One party, he said. That's it. And you're explaining everything, and I mean everything, before we go. The relief on her face was almost painful to watch. Thank you. Thank you so much. I promise you won't. Don't, Daniel interrupted. Don't promise anything. Just give me your number so we can figure out the details. She pulled out her phone, newest iPhone, he noticed, and they exchanged numbers. Her contact info simply said Claire M. Tomorrow afternoon? She asked. I can pick you up. I'll meet you somewhere public. Daniel wasn't stupid. Coffee shop on 7th Street, 2 o'clock. Okay. She was already backing toward the door. Okay, yes. Thank you again. You have no idea what this means. Still don't, Daniel said, and I'm definitely going to regret finding out. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Probably. Then she was gone, the bell chiming her exit. Daniel stood in his empty garage for a solid 10 seconds, trying to figure out what had just happened. Then he remembered Emma, cursed, and sprinted for his truck. He made it to the soccer field with 90 seconds to spare. Emma was standing with 3 other girls, all of them still in their grass-stained uniforms, engaged in what appeared to be a very serious debate about whether unicorns could beat dragons in a fight. Dragons have fire, one girl insisted. But unicorns have magic, Emma countered, which is obviously stronger. Dad! She spotted him and ran over, ponytail bouncing. She had his eyes and her mother's smile, and sometimes looking at her hurt in a way that Daniel couldn't explain. You're on time! Don't sound so surprised. Coach Martinez is keeping a chart. Emma was already climbing into the truck. You're at 63% punctuality this semester. That's a solid D-. That's failing. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just started paying attention. Daniel laughed despite himself. Emma had been talking in complete sentences since she was 2 and had never stopped. The day she was born, her mother had taken one look at her, said, I can't do this, and was gone within a week. Daniel had been 24, terrified, and completely unprepared for fatherhood. 8 years later, he still felt unprepared most days. But he showed up. So how was practice? He asked as they pulled onto the main road. Megan scored 3 goals, which was totally unfair because she's been playing since she was 4. I saved 2 shots, though, which coach said was really good for a beginner. She paused. Are we having pizza again? I was thinking tacos. We had Tacos Tuesday. Tacos Tuesday is not the same as Friday tacos. Completely different cultural context. Emma giggled. You're weird, Dad. Yeah, well, you're stuck with me. They stopped at the taco truck on 5th Street, the one with the green salsa that Emma claimed was too spicy but always ate anyway, and brought their food home to the apartment. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. But the rent was manageable, the neighborhood was safe, and Mrs. Rodriguez downstairs didn't mind babysitting when Daniel had to work late. While Emma did homework at the kitchen table, Daniel stood at the sink and tried to figure out what he'd agreed to. A stranger wanted him to pretend to be her boyfriend at her ex's engagement party. That was either the plot of a romantic comedy or the setup for a murder. Possibly both. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hi, it's Claire. Just wanted to say thank you again. And to confirm, tomorrow at 2, coffee shop on 7th? Daniel stared at the message. He could still back out. Tell her he'd reconsidered, wish her luck, block the number. Instead, he typed, yeah, see you then. What the hell was he doing? Saturday morning arrived with Emma's footsteps thundering down the hallway at 7:15 a.m., which was apparently sleeping in. Dad, I'm hungry. Daniel groaned into his pillow. Cereal's in the cabinet. We're out of the good cereal. Then have the bad cereal. The bad cereal tastes like cardboard. All cereal tastes like cardboard. That's why we add milk. Emma jumped onto his bed, landing with the force of a small meteor. Can we have pancakes? Do I look like I can make pancakes? You look like you got hit by a truck. That's fair. Daniel sat up, rubbing his eyes. Pancakes it is. They made pancakes together, which meant Emma did most of the mixing while Daniel tried to prevent the kitchen from catching fire. She was getting better at it, though. The pancakes actually looked like circles this time instead of amoebas. So, Emma said, drowning her stack in syrup, "Are you doing something today?" Daniel paused mid-bite. Emma had a sixth sense for when he was hiding things. "What makes you think that?" "You keep checking your phone, and you showered last night, which you only do when you have to meet someone." "I shower regularly." "You shower functionally. Last night you used the good soap." 7 years old and already a detective, Daniel was simultaneously proud and concerned. "I'm meeting someone for coffee," he admitted. "Just a work thing." "What kind of work thing happens at a coffee shop?" "The kind where I might help someone out for a few hours tomorrow." Emma narrowed her eyes. "Is this someone a lady?" "How is that relevant?" "It's totally relevant. Is she pretty?" "Emma, does she like tacos?" "I have no idea what her feelings are about tacos." "That's important information, Dad. You can't trust someone who doesn't like tacos." Daniel pointed his fork at her. "First of all, that's not true. Second, this isn't a date. She just needs help with something." "Uh-huh." Emma didn't look convinced. "What's her name?" "Claire." "Is she nice?" Daniel thought about the woman who'd walked into his garage last night, the desperation in her eyes, the way her hands shook, the pleas that had stopped him in his tracks. "I think so," he said quietly. "I think she's having a really hard time." Emma's expression softened. She had her mother's face, but none of her coldness, and sometimes Daniel wondered how he'd gotten so lucky. "Then you should help her." "Yeah?" "Yeah. That's what you do. You fix things." Daniel felt something tight in his chest. "Thanks, kiddo. But you should still ask about the tacos." Yeah. At 1:45 p.m., Daniel stood outside the coffee shop on 7th Street feeling ridiculous. He'd changed shirts 3 times before settling on his least-stained button-up, which Emma had helped him iron. She'd also insisted he wear the nice jeans, the ones without holes, and his actual shoes instead of work boots. "You look handsome," she'd declared before Mrs. Rodriguez picked her up for their Saturday afternoon craft session. Daniel felt like an imposter. The coffee shop was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and plants hanging from the ceiling. Daniel had been inside exactly once, taken one look at the menu, and immediately left. He wasn't paying $8 for coffee that came with a side of judgment. But Claire had picked it, so here he was. She arrived at 2:03, and Daniel almost didn't recognize her. Yesterday she'd been disheveled and panicked. Today she was polished, hair down and perfectly styled, minimal makeup, dark jeans, and a cream-colored blouse that screamed money in that quiet way expensive things did. She spotted him and waved, and for a moment Daniel saw something vulnerable cross her face before the composure snapped back into place. "Hi," she said, slightly breathless. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was—" "It's fine." Daniel gestured toward the door. "Should we—" They went inside and found a table in the back corner. Claire ordered something with an incomprehensible number of modifiers. Daniel got black coffee and tried not to wince at the price. "So," he said once they were seated, "you gonna tell me what I'm actually getting into here?" Claire took a sip of her drink, something with foam and cinnamon, and set it down carefully. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with the ex-boyfriend. His name is Marcus. We dated for 3 years. He proposed last year and I said no." "Why?" She looked surprised by the directness. "Because I didn't want to marry him." "But you dated him for 3 years." "I was busy. He was there." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's romantic." "I didn't say it was a good relationship." Claire twisted her cup between her hands. "Marcus wanted someone who would look good at parties and not ask questions. I was trying to build something that mattered. It didn't work." "And the best friend?" "Jessica." Something sharp entered Claire's voice. "We met in college. She was my roommate, my confidant, the person I told everything to." She paused. "Including why I broke up with Marcus." "Ah. Yeah. 6 months later, they're engaged, and everyone we know is celebrating like it's the romance of the century." Daniel studied her. "You still love him?" "No." The answer came quick and certain. I'm angry. I'm humiliated. But I don't love him. Then why go to the party at all? Claire met his eyes, and for a moment the polished facade cracked. Because if I don't, I'm admitting defeat. Everyone in my life, everyone, has spent the last year telling me I made a mistake, that I chose wrong, that I'm going to end up alone because I'm too ambitious, too cold, too much. Her voice dropped. I need to walk into that room and show them I'm fine. But you're not fine. No, she admitted, I'm really not. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the coffee shop buzzed with Saturday afternoon energy. College students studying, couples on dates, someone's toddler having a meltdown over a cookie. Okay, Daniel said finally. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. 1. You tell me the truth about everything. I don't like surprises. Deal. 2. We keep this professional. I'm helping you out, but that's it. Understood. 3. If this gets weird or uncomfortable or crosses any lines, we bail. I don't care who's there or what they think. Claire nodded. Agreed. And 4. Daniel leaned back. You need to tell me what you're not telling me. She froze. What do you mean? Claire, I've been working with people long enough to know when someone's hiding something. You're nervous about this party, sure. But there's something else, something you're afraid of. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and slid it across the table. Daniel looked down at a news article from 3 months ago. The headline read, Montgomery Industries CEO faces shareholder revolt. He looked up sharply. You're a CEO of a $70 billion company. Claire's voice was flat. My father founded it. He died 2 years ago and left it to me. Half the board thinks I'm too young. The other half thinks I'm incompetent. And all of them are waiting for me to fail. Daniel stared at her. And you came to my garage. I needed someone who didn't know, who wouldn't care. She met his eyes. Who might actually help me because I asked, not because of what I could do for them. Jesus Christ. I know this changes things. Yeah, it does. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. You should have led with that. Would you have said yes if I had? Probably not. Daniel looked at the woman across from him, young, powerful, and completely alone. He thought about Emma telling him he fixes things. He thought about the pleas that had stopped him cold. The party tomorrow, he said slowly. Everyone there is going to know who you are. Yes. And they're going to wonder who the hell I am. Yes. This is such a bad idea. I know. Daniel sighed. What time should I pick you up? The relief on Claire's face was immediate and overwhelming. You're really, against my better judgment, yes. He pulled his phone back across the table. But we're doing this my way. No lies, no games, just 2 people showing up to a party. Okay. And Claire? He waited until she looked at him. If this goes south, I'm blaming you. She laughed, and it sounded real. Fair enough. They spent the next hour going over the details. The party was at the Ashworth Estate, a mansion in the hills that Daniel had driven past but never imagined entering. Claire would send a car to pick him up at 5. The dress code was cocktail attire, which apparently meant he needed to rent a suit. I have a guy, Claire said. I'll send you his information. Tell him you're with me, and he'll take care of everything. Your guy. Everyone has a guy, Daniel. I have a guy who sells me discount brake pads out of his garage. I don't think that's the same thing. She smiled. Probably not. When they finally left the coffee shop, the sun was starting to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Claire's car was parked across the street, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Daniel's garage. Thank you, she said, for giving me a chance. Thank you for being honest. Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. Eventually. I'm sorry I didn't tell you right away. She trailed off. Wanted to be normal for a minute? Yeah, I get that. They stood there for a moment, 2 strangers who'd somehow stumbled into each other's lives. I should go, Claire said finally. I have a dozen calls to make before tomorrow. CEO stuff. CEO stuff. Daniel watched her walk to her car, watched her climb in and drive away. Then he pulled out his phone and called Emma. "Hey kiddo, how's crafting?" "We made friendship bracelets. Mrs. Rodriguez says I'm a natural. Did you have your meeting?" "Yeah, it was interesting." "Is she nice?" Daniel thought about Claire, the fear in her eyes, the weight on her shoulders, the way she'd said please like someone drowning. "Yeah," he said softly. "She's nice, and she needs help." "Then you did the right thing, Dad." "Hope so, Em. Hope so." The next evening, Daniel stood in front of his bathroom mirror wearing a rented tuxedo that fit better than anything he'd ever owned and felt like a complete fraud. Emma sat on the toilet lid, swinging her legs and offering commentary. "You look fancy," she declared. "I look ridiculous." "You look like a prince." "I look like a mechanic in a penguin suit." "Same thing." The doorbell rang at 4:53 p.m. Daniel took one last look at himself, decided there was no fixing this, and went to answer it. The driver waiting outside was professional and polite. The car was a different kind of luxury than yesterday's, longer, darker, with windows tinted so black Daniel couldn't see inside. "Daniel Brooks?" the driver asked. "That's me." "Ms. Montgomery sends her regards. She'll meet you at the venue." Emma appeared at Daniel's elbow. "Wow, that's a really nice car." "That's a really expensive car," Daniel corrected. "There's a difference." "Can I see inside?" The driver smiled. "Perhaps another time, miss." Daniel knelt down to Emma's level. "You be good for Mrs. Rodriguez, okay? I'll be back late." "I know." Emma hugged him tight. "Be nice to Claire." "I'm always nice." "And ask about the tacos." The drive to the Ashworth estate took 40 minutes, winding up into hills Daniel had only seen from a distance. The houses got bigger and farther apart, gates getting taller, lawns getting greener. By the time they pulled through the massive iron gates of the estate itself, Daniel felt like he'd entered a different world. The mansion was lit up like a fairy tale, all white stone and columns, with lights strung through the trees and music drifting from somewhere inside. Cars lined the circular driveway, each one worth more than Daniel made in a year, probably 3 years. People in evening gowns and tuxedos mingled on the front steps, champagne glasses catching the light. Daniel's phone buzzed. "I'm already inside. Meet me by the fountain in the main hall. You'll see it." "And Daniel, thank you for this." The driver opened his door. "Sir?" Right, this was happening. Daniel climbed out of the car and immediately felt every eye turned toward him. He recognized the look, the one that said, "Who's this guy?" He'd seen it his whole life, every time he walked into a room where he didn't belong. He straightened his shoulders and walked up the steps. The main hall was ridiculous. That was the only word for it. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a fountain in the center that was definitely a fountain and definitely unnecessary. People clustered in groups, laughing and talking with the ease of people who'd never worried about rent. Daniel spotted Claire immediately. She stood near the fountain, wearing a dark blue dress that should have been illegal. Her hair was up, her makeup perfect, and when she turned and saw him, something in her expression shifted. Relief mixed with something else he couldn't quite name. She walked over, heels clicking on marble. "You came," she said quietly. "I said I would. People say a lot of things. I'm not people." She smiled, small and real. "No, you're not." Then she linked her arm through his, and Daniel felt every eye in the room lock onto them like targeting systems. "Ready?" Claire asked. Daniel looked at the crowd of wealth and privilege, at the judgment already forming on their faces, at the woman beside him who was trying so hard to be brave. "Not even a little bit," he said. "Let's do this." They walked into the party together, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Daniel heard a very clear voice that sounded suspiciously like his own. "You're definitely going to regret this." But when Claire's grip on his arm tightened, just a fraction, just enough to feel, he thought maybe regret could wait. At least until he figured out what the hell he'd actually gotten himself into. The whispers started immediately. Daniel felt them before he heard them, that particular quality of attention that came when people were talking about you while pretending not to. Claire's arm remained linked through his as they moved deeper into the party, her posture perfect, her smile fixed in place like armor. "Breathe," she murmured without moving her lips. I am breathing. You're holding your breath. I can feel it. Daniel forced air into his lungs. Around them, clusters of designer-clad guests shifted and reformed, their gazes following Claire's movement through the room with predatory interest. A waiter appeared with champagne flutes on a silver tray. Claire took two and handed one to Daniel. Small sips, she said quietly, and whatever you do, don't drink it all at once. These people can smell desperation. Encouraging. I'm serious. Half of them are waiting for me to mess up, and the other half? Already planning how to profit from it. A woman in a red dress that probably cost more than Daniel's truck detached herself from a nearby group and glided over. She was maybe 50, with the kind of face that suggested extensive work and expensive maintenance. Claire, darling, the woman's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. What a surprise to see you here. Patricia. Claire's own smile didn't waver. I wouldn't miss it. Patricia's eyes slid to Daniel, assessing him like livestock at auction. And who is this? This is Daniel. Claire's grip on his arm tightened fractionally. Daniel, this is Patricia Ashworth, the party's host. Ma'am. Daniel extended his hand. Patricia took it with 2 fingers, the way someone might handle something unpleasant they found on their shoe. How rustic. Where did you two meet? His garage, Claire said smoothly. My car broke down. Your car? Patricia's tone suggested cars didn't break down for people like Claire. How unfortunate. Actually, it was the best thing that happened to me all week. The temperature in their immediate vicinity dropped about 10 degrees. Patricia's smile grew thinner. How charming. Well, Marcus and Jessica are near the terrace. If you'd like to congratulate them, I'm sure they'd be thrilled to see you. I'm sure they would. Patricia drifted away, already turning to share whatever conclusion she'd just reached with her nearest ally. Daniel watched her go, then looked at Claire. She hates you. She hates that I'm here. There's a difference. Is there? Patricia backed Marcus after we broke up, told everyone I was making a mistake. Having me show up with someone else contradicts her narrative. Claire took a sip of champagne. People hate being wrong more than they hate anything else. They moved through the room, and Daniel started to notice patterns. Some guests approached Claire with genuine warmth, brief conversations where her shoulders relaxed and her smile reached her eyes. But more often, people watched from a distance, their expressions ranging from curiosity to calculation to barely disguised hostility. You have a lot of enemies for someone who fixes companies, Daniel observed. I don't fix companies. I restructure them, which usually means cutting the fat. And the fat is people. The fat is waste, corruption, nepotism. Claire's voice hardened. My father spent 30 years building something meaningful, and in the 2 years since he died, I've watched half his board try to strip it for parts. That's why they want you out. That's why they're going to fail. A man's voice cut across the room. Claire Montgomery, I heard you were here. Daniel turned to see a tall guy in his early 30s threading through the crowd. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive haircut. Everything about him screamed money and confidence, including the way he moved, like he owned every room he entered. Claire's entire body went rigid. Marcus, she said evenly. So this was the ex-boyfriend. Daniel studied him with the same attention he'd give a suspicious noise coming from an engine. Marcus was good-looking in that generic way rich people often were. Symmetrical features, perfect teeth, and the kind of tan that came from tropical vacations instead of working outdoors. But his eyes were cold, and his smile didn't quite land right. I'm surprised you came, Marcus said, stopping just close enough to be invasive. Jessica wasn't sure you would. I wouldn't miss celebrating your happiness. How generous. Marcus's gaze slid to Daniel. And you brought a guest. How unexpected. Claire's fingers dug into Daniel's arm. Marcus, this is Daniel Brooks. Daniel, Marcus Whitmore. Daniel extended his hand. Marcus took it, and what followed was less a handshake and more a grip strength competition that Marcus apparently thought he was winning. Daniel had spent 15 years working with tools and machinery. Marcus's hand felt like a child's. Brooks, Marcus repeated, his smile sharpening. What is it you do, Daniel? I'm a mechanic. The silence that followed was spectacular. Marcus's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something that looked suspiciously like delight. A mechanic, he said slowly. Claire, you're dating a mechanic? Is there a problem with mechanics? Daniel asked. No, no, of course not. Marcus's tone suggested otherwise. It's just unexpected. Claire usually prefers a certain type. Apparently her type evolved, Daniel said flatly. Claire made a noise that might have been a laugh or a cough. Marcus's smile grew predatory. Well, this is fascinating. He looked past them. Jessica, darling, come meet Claire's new friend. A blonde woman separated from a nearby group and joined them. She was beautiful in that carefully constructed way. Perfect makeup, perfect dress, perfect everything. When she saw Claire, something complicated crossed her face before smoothing into practiced warmth. Claire, I'm so glad you could make it. Jessica's voice was soft, almost gentle. It means a lot. Congratulations, Claire said. Her voice was steady, but Daniel felt her trembling slightly. I hope you'll be very happy. We will be. Jessica's hand found Marcus's, their fingers intertwining. The diamond on her ring finger caught the light, throwing tiny rainbows across the marble floor. I'm sorry things didn't work out between you two, but don't, Claire interrupted quietly. Please don't. Jessica had the grace to look embarrassed. Marcus didn't. We should let you enjoy the party, he said, not moving. I'm sure there are plenty of people here who'd love to catch up with you. I'm sure there are. They stood there for a moment, the four of them, tension thick enough to cut. Then Marcus smiled, squeezed Jessica's hand, and steered her away toward the terrace. Daniel waited until they were out of earshot. You okay? No. Claire's voice was barely audible. I need a minute. She pulled him through the crowd, past the fountain, down a hallway lined with paintings that probably cost more than Daniel's life. They ended up in what looked like a library, floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather furniture, windows overlooking gardens lit with string lights. Claire released his arm and walked to the window, her shoulders rising and falling with careful breaths. That was fun, Daniel offered. She laughed, sharp and bitter. That was hell. He's an asshole. He's always been an asshole. I just didn't care before. And Jessica? Claire turned to face him. In the dim light of the library, with her careful composure cracking, she looked younger than she had any right to. Jessica was my best friend for 10 years. She knew everything about me, everything I was afraid of, everything I wanted, every weakness I tried to hide. Her voice broke. And then she took all of that and gave it to him. That's not your fault, isn't it? I chose them. I trusted them. I was so focused on building something that mattered that I didn't notice the people closest to me were... She stopped, pressing her fingers to her temples. Sorry, you didn't sign up for this. Actually, I'm pretty sure I did. Daniel moved closer. You paid for the tux and everything. That got a real laugh. Small, but genuine. Thank you, Claire said quietly, for being here. For not running when Marcus started his dick measuring contest? I was going to say posturing, but yes. He seems like the type who does that a lot. He does. It's exhausting. They stood in silence for a moment. Through the windows, Daniel could see guests mingling on the terrace, champagne and laughter floating on the evening air. It all looked so perfect from a distance. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Sure. Why did you really say no when he proposed? Claire looked at him for a long moment. Because I realized I was disappearing. Every conversation with him was about his career, his goals, his plans. Whenever I talked about the company, he'd get this look, like I was being difficult, like my ambition was some kind of personality flaw. She paused. The night he proposed, he told me I could step back from Montgomery Industries once we were married, that I didn't need to work so hard anymore. Let me guess. You'd be too busy being his wife. Exactly. Claire's jaw tightened. He wanted someone decorative, someone who'd smile at parties and not ask uncomfortable questions. And I looked at that ring and realized if I said yes, I'd spend the rest of my life getting smaller. Daniel thought about Emma, about raising her to believe she could be anything, about the future he wanted her to have, one where nobody expected her to shrink. You made the right choice, he said. Yeah? Claire's voice was small. Doesn't feel like it most days. Good choices rarely do, especially at first. She smiled, sad and tired. You're very wise for a mechanic. I'm very tired for a mechanic. There's a difference. Is there? Nope. Claire laughed again, and this time it sounded lighter. We should get back. People will talk if we disappear too long. Pretty sure they're already talking. Fair point. They returned to the party to find the crowd had grown. More guests had arrived. The music had gotten louder, and someone had dimmed the lights to create what Daniel assumed was supposed to be ambiance, but mostly just made it harder to avoid running into people. A hand caught Claire's elbow. Daniel turned to find a woman in her 60s wearing enough jewelry to fund a small country. Claire, dear. The woman's voice was warm, her eyes sharp. I was hoping to catch you. Senator Hayes. Claire's professional smile snapped back into place. How are you? Concerned, frankly. I've been hearing troubling rumors about Montgomery Industries. Nothing to worry about. Stock prices suggest otherwise. Claire's expression didn't change, but Daniel felt her tense. Temporary fluctuations. The market always corrects. Does it? Senator Hayes glanced at Daniel, then back to Claire. I'd hate to see your father's legacy compromised by inexperience. My father trusted me to lead this company. I won't let him down. Of course not, dear. I'm simply saying that if you need guidance, advice from those with more seasoning, you shouldn't hesitate to ask. The senator's smile was kind, but her words landed like knives. Pride has destroyed more promising careers than incompetence ever has. She drifted away before Claire could respond. Let me guess, Daniel said. She's on the board. She chairs the advisory committee. Claire's voice was tight, which means she has the authority to call emergency meetings and propose leadership reviews. Can she remove you? Not alone. But if she gets enough board members to agree. Claire trailed off, watching the senator join a group of similarly aged men and women near the terrace doors. She's been circling since my father died, waiting for me to fail. What happens if they vote you out? They install someone they can control, someone who'll prioritize profits over people, who'll cut corners/benefits, outsource everything that matters. Claire's hands clenched. Everything my father built, everything he believed in, will disappear in under a year. Daniel was about to respond when he noticed Marcus watching them from across the room. The expression on his face was difficult to read, satisfaction mixed with something calculating. Your ex is staring, Daniel said quietly. Claire followed his gaze. He always does that, checks to see if he still has power over me. Does he? What do you think? I think you're standing here instead of leaving, so maybe a little. Claire looked at him sharply, but whatever response she was planning died when the music suddenly cut out. The room fell silent as someone tapped a microphone. Patricia Ashworth stood near the terrace, microphone in hand, her smile wide and artificial. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, Marcus and Jessica would like to say a few words. The crowd shifted, creating a path to where Marcus and Jessica stood holding hands. Jessica looked nervous. Marcus looked like he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. Thank you all for being here, Marcus began, his voice carrying across the room. Jessica and I are overwhelmed by your love and support. Daniel felt Claire go very still beside him. When I first met Jessica, I knew she was special. Kind, intelligent, beautiful, everything a man could want in a partner. Marcus's gaze drifted toward Claire just for a second. Everything I'd been looking for. Subtle, Daniel muttered. He's never been subtle. Some relationships teach us what we don't want, Marcus continued. They show us our mistakes, our misjudgments. And if we're lucky, they lead us to exactly where we're supposed to be. The crowd murmured approval. Jessica squeezed Marcus's hand, her smile uncertain. Jessica taught me that real love isn't complicated. It's simple, easy, natural. Another glance at Claire. It doesn't require constant negotiation or compromise. It just fits. I'm going to hit him, Daniel said conversationally. Please, don't. He's doing this on purpose. Of course he is. That's what Marcus does. He finds your weakness and pushes until you break. Daniel looked at her. You're not breaking. Not yet, Marcus raised his glass. To Jessica, to our future, and to finally finding what I was always meant to have, The crowd applauded, glasses clinked. Jessica kissed Marcus's cheek, and the smile she gave him looked almost genuine. Claire finished her champagne in one swallow, violating her own rule about small sips. "I need air," she said. They pushed through the crowd toward the terrace. Outside, the night was cooler, the garden stretching into darkness beyond the reach of the string lights. Claire walked to the stone railing and gripped it with both hands. "He's lying," she said. "Jessica isn't easy or simple. She's messy and complicated and has panic attacks before every important decision. That's who she is. That's why I loved her." Her voice cracked. "And he's going to spend their entire marriage trying to turn her into someone she's not. Maybe she wants to be someone different. Nobody actually wants that. They just think they do until it's too late." Daniel leaned against the railing beside her. In the distance, he could hear music starting again, laughter floating through the open doors. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you didn't lose anything worth keeping." Claire turned to look at him. "That's easy to say. Doesn't make it less true. Marcus wanted a trophy. Jessica wanted to feel important. Neither of them wanted you. They wanted what you could give them." Daniel paused. "That's not friendship. That's not love. That's just convenience." "And what's the difference?" "Real love shows up even when it's inconvenient. Real friendship doesn't bail when things get hard." He thought about Emma, about late-night fevers and school projects and every small difficult moment of parenthood. Real caring means you choose someone even when choosing them costs you something. Claire was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "No one's ever chosen me like that." "Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people." She laughed, but it sounded broken. "Story of my life." They stood there in the darkness, the party continuing without them. Daniel thought about his apartment, about Emma probably already asleep at Mrs. Rodriguez's, about his simple life that didn't include mansions or champagne or corporate empires. He thought about going home. Instead, he said, "You want to get out of here?" Claire looked at him. "What?" "Leave. Right now. Just walk out." "I can't just leave. People will talk." "They're already talking. You said it yourself. Half these people want you to fail. Why give them the satisfaction of watching you suffer?" "Because if I leave, Marcus wins." "Marcus already thinks he won. That's why he gave that speech." Daniel pushed off the railing. "But here's the thing. You don't win by staying somewhere you're not wanted. You win by deciding you don't need their approval in the first place." Claire stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Where would we even go?" "I know a place." For a moment he thought she'd refuse. Then she looked back toward the party, toward the lights and the laughter and all the people who wanted her to be someone smaller, and something shifted in her expression. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." They didn't make a dramatic exit. They simply walked through the party, past the fountain, down the front steps. The valet looked confused when Daniel asked for a taxi instead of their car, but $20 solved that problem. Claire didn't look back once. The taxi took them down the winding hills, back toward the city, and with each mile, Daniel watched Claire's shoulders gradually relax. She'd kicked off her heels and was holding them in her lap, her hair coming loose from its careful arrangement. "Where are we going?" she asked. "You'll see." 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of a small diner on 5th Street. It was nothing special: cracked vinyl booths, fluorescent lights, a jukebox in the corner, playing something from the 70s. But the coffee was strong, the food was decent, and nobody cared who you were or what you did. Claire looked at the building, then at Daniel. "You brought me to a diner. Best coffee in the city. I own a $70 billion company, and I'll bet you haven't had a good cup of coffee in years." They went inside. The waitress, a woman named Marge, who'd worked there longer than Daniel had been alive, took one look at Claire's evening gown and didn't even blink. "Booth or counter?" "Booth," Daniel said. They slid into a corner seat. Marge brought coffee without being asked, and Claire wrapped both hands around the mug like it was the first good thing she'd touched all night. "This is insane," she said. "Which part?" "All of it. I'm supposed to be at that party. I'm supposed to be networking, making appearances, showing everyone I'm fine." "Are you fine?" "No." Then why pretend? Claire took a sip of coffee. Her eyes widened slightly. This is actually really good. Told you. Where did you learn about this place? Used to come here after late shifts, when Emma was a baby and I couldn't sleep. Daniel added cream to his own cup. Something about a diner at 2 in the morning makes everything feel less impossible. Is that what you tell yourself when things get hard? No. When things get hard, I usually just panic quietly and hope nobody notices. Claire laughed, and it sounded real. That's my strategy too. Marge returned with menus. You kids eating or just drinking? Daniel looked at Claire. Hungry? Starving, actually. They ordered. Pancakes for Claire, a burger for Daniel. While they waited, Claire pulled the pins from her hair and let it fall loose around her shoulders. Without the perfect styling and careful makeup, she looked younger, softer. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why are you being so nice to me? You don't owe me anything. You could have walked away a dozen times tonight. Daniel considered the question. You want the truth? Always. You remind me of someone. Who? Me. About 8 years ago. He stared into his coffee. Emma's mother left when she was 6 days old. Just gone. And suddenly I had this tiny human depending on me, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was terrified, alone. Everyone told me I should give her up, that I wasn't ready, that I couldn't handle it. But you didn't. No, I figured it out. Made mistakes, definitely. Still making them. He looked up. But showing up every day, even when it's hard, that's what matters. Not being perfect. Just being there. Claire was quiet for a moment. That's why you said yes when I asked for help. Yeah, because I know what it's like to need someone and have nobody there. Their food arrived. Claire drowned her pancakes in syrup and ate like someone who'd been starving for days. Daniel worked on his burger and tried not to think about how much trouble they'd both probably be in tomorrow. So what happens now? He asked. With Montgomery Industries, I mean. Claire's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Honestly, I don't know. The board meeting is Monday. If Senator Hayes has enough votes, she could call for a leadership review. And if that happens, they remove you. They try to. What's the difference? Whether I let them. Claire set down her fork. My father didn't build that company so a bunch of corrupt board members could strip it for parts. He believed in treating people fairly and building something that lasted. And I'll be damned if I let them destroy that because they think I'm too young to know better. You have a plan. I'm working on one. How much time do you have? 36 hours. Daniel whistled, cutting it close. Story of my life. Claire picked up her coffee. What about you? What happens when you get home? Emma asks me 1,000 questions. I try to explain tonight without sounding completely insane, and then I go back to fixing cars and pretending this never happened. You're good at that, fixing things. Cars are easy. They break in predictable ways. And people? People are harder. But sometimes they're worth the effort. Claire smiled, and for the first time all night, it looked completely genuine. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. Don't thank me yet. You still have to survive Monday. True. She pulled out her phone and winced at the screen. 17 missed calls, 23 texts. Patricia Ashworth wants to know where I went. Marcus wants to know if I'm okay. And my assistant wants to know if I've lost my mind. Have you? Probably. Claire typed something quickly and put the phone away. But I don't care. Tonight was the first time in months I felt like myself. They finished eating. Marge brought the check and Claire tried to pay, but Daniel beat her to it. I thought you were doing me a favor, Claire protested. I am, but I'm still paying for dinner. That doesn't make sense. Welcome to my life. They left the diner and stood on the sidewalk. The city stretched around them, lights and noise and millions of people living their own complicated lives. I should get home, Daniel said. Emma is going to want details. Tell her I said thank you for sharing you. I will. Claire hesitated, then pulled out her phone again. Can I give you my real number? The one that's not just for emergencies? Sure. They exchanged numbers again, and this time her contact info said Claire Montgomery with a small blue heart emoji. Did you just add a heart to your own name? Daniel asked. Emma said you should ask about tacos. I figured a heart was close enough. He laughed. You talked to Emma? She texted me this afternoon, very thoroughly vetted my taco preferences. And? I'm pro taco. Apparently that means I passed inspection. A car pulled up, the same one that had brought Daniel to the party. The driver stepped out, nodded politely, and opened the door. Your chariot awaits, Daniel said. Claire didn't move. Daniel? Yeah? What you said earlier, about real caring meaning you choose someone even when it costs you something. She met his eyes. You did that tonight, and I won't forget it. Before he could respond, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, quick and soft and completely unexpected. Then she climbed into the car and was gone. Daniel stood on the sidewalk, watching the taillights disappear, his hand unconsciously touching the spot where she'd kissed him. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Get home safe, mechanic. He smiled and typed back, You too, CEO. The response came immediately. See you Monday? Daniel hesitated. Monday meant board meetings and corporate warfare and a world he had no business being part of. Monday meant complications he didn't need. He typed, Maybe. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Good enough. Daniel called another taxi and headed home. Mrs. Rodriguez met him at the door, Emma asleep in her arms. How was the party? She whispered. Complicated. Good complicated or bad complicated? Daniel looked at his daughter, peaceful and perfect and completely unaware that her father had just spent the evening in a world that would eat him alive. I'm still figuring that out, he said. Sunday morning arrived with Emma jumping on Daniel's bed at 7:30, which was somehow both too early and exactly on schedule. Dad, 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 Daniel groaned into his pillow. What? Mrs. Rodriguez said you came home late. Was the party fun? Did Claire like you? Did you dance? Did anyone throw cake? Why would anyone throw cake? I saw it in a movie once. It looked fun. Daniel rolled over to find his daughter sitting cross-legged on his chest, wearing mismatched pajamas and an expression of absolute determination. No one threw cake. Yes, the party was fine, and I need coffee before this interrogation continues. That's what guilty people say. I'm not guilty. I'm tired. Same thing. They made breakfast together, scrambled eggs that Emma insisted on cooking herself, which meant Daniel spent 20 minutes scraping burnt egg off the pan while she provided commentary. The apartment smelled like smoke and regret, but Emma looked proud of herself, which Daniel decided counted as a win. So, Emma said, drowning her eggs in ketchup, tell me about Claire. What do you want to know? Everything. Is she nice? Is she pretty? Does she like tacos? Did you ask her about tacos like I said? She texted you about tacos, actually. Emma's eyes went wide. She did? Apparently you thoroughly vetted her taco preferences yesterday afternoon. I had to make sure she was good enough for you, Dad. That's my job. Daniel felt something warm and painful in his chest. Since when is that your job? Since always. You're my dad. I have to make sure nobody's mean to you. I'm the parent. I'm supposed to protect you. We can protect each other. Emma said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. So? Is she nice? Daniel thought about Claire standing on the terrace, her composure cracking, about the way she'd laughed in the diner, real and unguarded, about the kiss on his cheek that he was definitely not thinking about every 5 minutes. Yeah, he said quietly. She's nice, and she's having a really hard time. Are you going to help her? I don't know if I can. But you want to? That was the question, wasn't it? Daniel looked at his daughter, 7 years old and already smarter than him, and wondered when he'd become so transparent. Maybe, he admitted. Emma grinned. You like her? I met her 3 days ago. So, you liked me immediately, and I was covered in gross baby stuff. That's different. Is it? Yes. You're my kid. She's... Daniel trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. Someone who needs help, Emma supplied. And you're good at helping people, even when it's hard. Sometimes having a perceptive kid was inconvenient. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number. This is Rachel Kim, Ms. Montgomery's executive assistant. She asked me to reach out regarding tomorrow's board meeting. Are you available to speak? Daniel stared at the message. That's Fast. What is? Emma peered at his phone. Who's Rachel Kim? Claire's assistant. Ooh, fancy. Are you going to call her? I don't know. Dad, if someone needs help, you help them. That's the rule. When did that become the rule? Since you made it the rule. You tell me all the time, if someone's struggling, you don't walk away. Emma pointed her fork at him. You can't have rules for me that you don't follow yourself. You're 7. How are you this smart? I pay attention. She went back to her eggs. Also, Mrs. Rodriguez says you're emotionally stunted and need someone to push you out of your comfort zone. Mrs. Rodriguez said that? Not in those words, but I'm paraphrasing. Daniel picked up his phone and typed back. I'm available this afternoon if that works. The response came within seconds. Perfect. 2 p.m. at Montgomery Industries headquarters. I'll have your name at security. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Emma was watching him with barely concealed delight. You're going to see her. I'm going to talk to her assistant about a meeting. Same thing. Completely different thing. Sure, Dad. Whatever helps you sleep. Daniel threw a dish towel at her. She caught it, laughing, and the sound filled their small kitchen like sunlight. The rest of the morning passed in the familiar rhythm of Sunday. Laundry, grocery shopping, Emma's insistence that they needed ice cream even though they still had ice cream from last week. Daniel let her win that argument because he was distracted, his mind circling back to Claire and board meetings and a world he had no business entering. At 1:30, he dropped Emma off at her friend Madison's house for a play date. Madison's mom, Sarah, who always looked slightly frazzled and completely genuine, gave him a knowing look. Hot date? Work thing. In a button-up shirt on Sunday afternoon? Daniel looked down at himself. He had changed 3 times. It's a nice button-up. Uh-huh, Sarah smiled. Well, Emma can stay for dinner if you need. We're doing pizza and a movie. You don't have to... Daniel, I have 3 kids. 1 more makes 0 difference. Go to your work thing. He thanked her and drove to Montgomery Industries headquarters, which was located in a glass tower downtown that made Daniel feel immediately out of place. The building was all sharp edges and reflective surfaces, the kind of architecture designed to intimidate. Security had his name. They gave him a visitor badge and directed him to the 42nd floor. The elevator ride up felt like ascending into a different atmosphere. Each floor that passed seemed to add weight to Daniel's chest. By the time the doors opened, he was seriously reconsidering every decision that had led him here. The reception area was sleek and modern. White furniture, abstract art, a view of the city that probably cost more than Daniel's entire building. A woman in her 30s stood near the windows, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing emphatically at someone Daniel couldn't see. She ended the call and turned. Mr. Brooks? Daniel? Rachel Kim. She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, professional, and carried the particular energy of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. Thank you for coming on short notice. Is Claire here? In her office. She's been there since 6 this morning. Rachel's expression suggested this wasn't unusual. She asked me to brief you before the meeting tomorrow. Brief me on what? Everything. Rachel gestured toward a conference room. Do you have a few hours? Daniel followed her inside. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows, a table that could seat 20, and walls covered in screens displaying stock prices, news feeds, and what looked like organizational charts. Rachel pulled up a presentation on the main screen. How much do you know about Montgomery Industries? It's big. Claire runs it. Some people want her out. That's the summary version. Rachel clicked through slides. The detailed version is significantly more complicated. Montgomery Industries is a $73 billion conglomerate with interests in manufacturing, technology, and sustainable infrastructure. Claire's father, Thomas Montgomery, founded it 40 years ago with the specific goal of proving you could build a profitable company while treating workers ethically. Sounds idealistic. It was. It is. Rachel pulled up a photo of an older man with kind eyes and Claire's determined chin. Thomas believed that companies had responsibilities beyond shareholder value. He paid fair wages, provided comprehensive benefits, invested in communities, and somehow he made it work. Let me guess, the board disagreed. About half of them. The other half were true believers. Rachel's expression hardened. When Thomas died 2 years ago, he left controlling interest to Claire. She was 28, had been working her way through every department since college, and he trusted her to continue his vision. But the board didn't. Some did. Some saw an opportunity. Rachel clicked to a new slide showing a dozen faces. These are the current board members. Senator Patricia Hayes chairs the advisory committee. She's been vocal about her concerns regarding Claire's leadership. By concerns, you mean she wants Claire gone. Essentially. Hayes believes the company should prioritize profits, cut benefits, reduce wages, outsource manufacturing overseas, everything Thomas spent 40 years building against. Daniel studied the faces on the screen. They all looked successful and confident, the kind of people who'd never worried about making rent. What's she waiting for? Ammunition. The company's stock has been volatile lately, partly due to market conditions, partly due to uncertainty about leadership. If Hayes can prove Claire's decisions are hurting shareholders, she can call for a vote. And tomorrow's meeting? Rachel's jaw tightened. Tomorrow we present quarterly results. If they're bad, or if Hayes can spin them as bad, she'll move for a leadership review. Can she win? Depends on the votes. We need 7 board members to support Claire. We have 5 confirmed. 2 are undecided. Rachel met his eyes. And 2 are actively working against her. So it's close. It's a nightmare. Rachel pulled up another slide showing financial projections. Claire's been working 18-hour days trying to prepare, building her case, gathering evidence of Hayes' corruption, planning for every possible scenario. Evidence of corruption? Hayes has been funneling company contracts to firms she has personal stakes in, voting against projects that would hurt her investments, using insider knowledge to trade stock. Rachel's voice was flat. It's all illegal. We just need to prove it in a way the board can't ignore. Daniel looked at the data on the screens, the complexity of it all making his head hurt. Why are you telling me this? Because Claire asked me to. Rachel turned to face him fully. She said you're the first person in months who's been honest with her, who didn't want something, who helped her because she asked, not because of what she could do for you. I'm a mechanic. I fix cars. I have no idea how to help with any of this. You already did. She came in this morning different, more focused, more herself. Rachel's expression softened slightly. Do you know how rare that is? Everyone in her life wants something from her. Her board wants her to fail or succeed based on their own agendas. Her ex-boyfriend wanted a trophy. Her former best friend wanted proximity to power. She paused. You just wanted to help, and that meant everything. Daniel felt the weight of that settling on his shoulders. She's going to be okay tomorrow, right? She has a plan? She always has a plan. Whether it works? Rachel trailed off. That's the question. They spent the next hour going over details, board member profiles, financial reports, the specific accusations Hayes was likely to make. Daniel's head was spinning by the time Rachel finally closed the presentation. Any questions? She asked. About 1,000, but mostly, why me? Why am I here? Because tomorrow is going to be brutal. And when it's over, Claire's going to need someone who isn't part of this world, someone who reminds her why she's fighting. Rachel stood. She'd never ask you herself. She's too proud. But I'm asking, will you be there? Daniel thought about Emma asking if he was going to help, about Claire's voice when she said, please, about the way she'd looked at the diner, finally relaxed. What time does the meeting start? Rachel smiled. 9 a.m. I'll have your name at security. I'll be there. Thank you. Rachel walked him to the elevator. And Daniel? Whatever happens tomorrow, don't let her push you away. She does that when she's scared, builds walls and pretends she doesn't need anyone. Sounds familiar. Does it? Daniel thought about the years after Emma's mother left, when he'd convinced himself they were better off alone. Yeah, it does. The elevator doors opened. Daniel stepped inside and Rachel held the door. She talks about you differently than she talks about anyone else, Rachel said quietly. Like you're real in a way the rest of us aren't. Don't waste that. The doors closed before Daniel could respond. He drove home in a daze, his mind trying to process everything Rachel had told him. By the time he picked up Emma from Madison's house, he'd made approximately 0 progress on that front. Emma climbed into the truck smelling like pizza and chaos. How was your work thing? Complicated. Good complicated or bad complicated? Still figuring that out. Is Claire in trouble? Daniel glanced at his daughter. What makes you think that? You have your worried face. You only get that when something's really wrong. Emma buckled her seatbelt. Is she going to be okay? I hope so. Are you going to help her? I'm going to try. Emma nodded, satisfied. Good, because she needs you. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel sat on their cramped balcony and stared at the city lights. His phone buzzed. Thank you for meeting with Rachel. Claire, I know this is insane. You don't have to come tomorrow, Daniel typed back. What time should I be there? You're serious? Apparently. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. 9 a.m., 42nd floor. And Daniel, you don't have to dress up, just be yourself. That's either very trusting or very reckless. Probably both. Daniel smiled despite himself. See you tomorrow. Thank you for everything. He didn't sleep well that night. His mind kept circling through worst-case scenarios. Claire losing the vote, losing the company, losing everything her father had built. By the time his alarm went off at 6, he'd been awake for an hour. Emma found him in the kitchen, already dressed, staring at his coffee like it held answers. Big day? She asked. Big day. You'll do great, Dad. I'm not doing anything, just being there. Sometimes that's the most important thing. Daniel looked at his 7-year-old daughter and wondered, not for the first time, who was raising who. Mrs. Rodriguez picked up Emma for school. Daniel drove downtown through morning traffic, his hands tight on the wheel. He parked 3 blocks from Montgomery Industries because parking near the building cost more per hour than he made in a day. Security waved him through. The elevator ride to 42 felt longer than yesterday, each floor adding pressure to his chest. Rachel met him in the reception area. She looked like she'd been up all night. She's in the boardroom, Rachel said. Meeting starts in 15 minutes. How is she? Terrified, brilliant, completely ready. Rachel handed him a folder. Seating chart. You'll be in the back? Observer status. Don't speak unless spoken to, don't react to anything they say, and whatever you do, don't leave before it's over. Encouraging. I'm serious, Daniel. Hayes is going to go after her hard. It's going to be ugly. I'm not going anywhere. Rachel studied him for a moment, then nodded. Conference room B, down the hall, last door on the left. Daniel found the room easily. It was smaller than yesterday's conference room, but no less intimidating. Long table, leather chairs, windows overlooking the city. 6 people were already seated, all of them in expensive suits, all of them looking at their phones or documents. Claire stood at the head of the table, perfectly composed in a charcoal gray suit. When she saw Daniel, something in her expression flickered, relief mixed with surprise. She walked over. You came. Said I would. People say a lot of things. We've had this conversation. A small smile touched her lips. Yes, we have. She glanced at the board members, then back to Daniel. This is going to be rough. Rachel warned me. And you're still here. Apparently I make terrible decisions. That makes 2 of us. The door opened and more board members filed in. Daniel recognized Senator Hayes immediately. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the bearing of someone used to wielding power. She saw Claire and smiled with all the warmth of a knife. Claire, dear, I wasn't expecting to see you so early. I like to be prepared. Of course you do. Hayes's gaze slid to Daniel. And who is this? An observer, Claire said smoothly. How unusual. We don't typically allow outsiders in board meetings. Board bylaws allow the CEO to have advisors present. Daniel is my advisor. Hayes's smile sharpened. Your advisor? How fascinating. And what exactly does he advise you on? Being human, Claire said. You should try it sometime. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Hayes's expression went cold, but before she could respond, the last few board members arrived and took their seats. Rachel slipped in and sat beside Daniel in the back row. She leaned close and whispered, Here we go. Claire moved to the head of the table and pulled up a presentation on the screen. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Today we'll review Q3 results, discuss ongoing projects, and address any concerns about the company's direction. Before we begin, Hayes interrupted, I'd like to propose adding an item to the agenda. Claire's expression didn't change. What item? A leadership review. Given recent stock volatility and shareholder concerns, I believe it's time we formally evaluate the CEO's performance. The room went silent. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Others, two men in their 60s, nodded agreement. Claire's hands were steady on the tablet in front of her. That's an unusual request during a quarterly review. These are unusual times. Surely you understand our fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. I understand you've been planning this for months. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? You heard me? Claire's voice was calm, but Daniel heard steel underneath. You've been waiting for the right moment to move against me. Today, you decided is that moment. That's a serious accusation. It's an observation, and I'm prepared to address it. Claire pulled up a new slide. But first, let's discuss those Q3 results you're so concerned about. For the next 40 minutes, Claire walked through financial data with surgical precision. Revenue was up 12%. Employee retention had improved. 3 major infrastructure projects were ahead of schedule and under budget. Every metric showed growth, stability, and careful management. Daniel watched Hayes' expression grow progressively darker. When Claire finished, she set down the tablet and looked at each board member in turn. Questions? A man at the far end of the table, mid-50s, expensive suit, raised his hand. The stock price is down 18% since March. Due to market-wide corrections in our sector, our competitors are down an average of 23%. We're outperforming. That's one interpretation, Hayes said. Another is that investor confidence in your leadership is declining. Based on what evidence? Based on the fact that you're 29 years old and running a $70 billion company. Hayes leaned forward. Your father was a visionary, but vision isn't hereditary. No, Claire agreed, but competence can be learned, which is why I spent 6 years working in every department before taking this position, why I have an MBA from Wharton and a decade of experience in sustainable infrastructure, why I've successfully led this company through 2 years of unprecedented challenges. And yet here we are, discussing whether you should continue leading. Here you are discussing it. The rest of the board seems satisfied with our performance. Hayes smiled. Are they? Let's ask. She looked around the table. All in favor of proceeding with a formal leadership review? Daniel held his breath. 2 hands went up immediately, the older men who'd nodded earlier. Then a woman in her 40s raised her hand slowly, uncertainty on her face. 3 votes. Hayes looked at the remaining board members. Anyone else? Silence. Claire's expression remained neutral, but Daniel saw her shoulders relax fractionally. Motion fails. 5 votes are required for a leadership review. You have 3. For now, Hayes said softly. But the day isn't over. No, Claire agreed. It isn't. Which brings me to my next point. She pulled up a new presentation. I've been reviewing company contracts from the past 18 months, specifically contracts awarded to firms with board member connections. Hayes went very still. In June of last year, Claire continued, her voice even, the board approved a $15 million contract with Pinnacle Construction for the Chicago infrastructure project. Pinnacle is owned by Hayes Enterprises, which is controlled by a trust in Senator Hayes' name. That's public knowledge, Hayes said, and I recused myself from that vote. Did you? Claire pulled up voting records. Because these minutes show you present and voting in favor. A clerical error. Was it also a clerical error when you voted to approve the Detroit contract with Meridian Tech, another Hayes Enterprises subsidiary, or the Boston contract with Summit Engineering? Claire's voice remained calm, but each word landed like a hammer. 8 contracts in 18 months, $600 million in total, all going to companies you have financial interest in. The room had gone completely silent. Those contracts were competitively bid, Hayes said, but her voice had lost its confidence. They were. And in each case, Pinnacle underbid competitors by exactly 3%, just enough to win, not enough to raise suspicions. Claire pulled up more documents. Until you look at the actual construction costs, every single project went over budget by an average of 40%. Money that went directly into your pocket. This is slander. This is evidence. Claire's eyes were ice. Evidence of fraud, insider trading, and breach of fiduciary duty. Evidence I've already shared with the SEC and the State Attorney General. Hayes stood abruptly. You have no idea what you're doing. I'm protecting my father's company from people who see it as something to exploit. Claire didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. You're done, Senator. I'm recommending the board vote to remove you immediately. You can't do that. Actually, I can. CEO has the authority to recommend director removal for cause, and I have plenty of cause. Claire looked at the other board members. Unless anyone wants to defend contract fraud? No one spoke. Hayes grabbed her briefcase. This isn't over. Yes, Claire said quietly. It is. Hayes walked out, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. The door slammed behind her. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the woman who'd raised her hand earlier spoke. I'm sorry, Claire. I didn't know about the contracts. If I had... I know. Claire's voice softened. That's why I'm not angry with you, Margaret. Hayes is very good at hiding things. Was good at hiding things, one of the older men corrected. He was smiling now. That was quite the presentation. Thank you. Claire looked around the table. I want to be clear. I'm not my father. I make mistakes. I'm still learning. But I will never use this company to enrich myself at the expense of our workers or our mission, and I won't tolerate anyone who does. The board members nodded, several murmuring agreement. If there's nothing else, Claire said, we can adjourn. The meeting dissolved. Board members filed out, several stopping to shake Claire's hand or offer quiet congratulations. Rachel was already on her phone, presumably dealing with the fallout. Daniel stayed in his seat, watching Claire accept praise with professional grace, while her hands trembled slightly against the table. Finally, the last board member left. The door closed. Claire stood there for a moment, perfectly still. Then she pulled out a chair and sat down hard, her head dropping into her hands. Daniel walked over and sat beside her. You okay? I think I'm going to throw up. That's fair. That was terrifying. Claire laughed, the sound shaky. I thought she had more votes. I was sure she'd win. But she didn't. No, she didn't. Claire looked up, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I can't believe that worked. You had evidence. You had a plan. You executed it perfectly. I was scared out of my mind. Could have fooled me. That's the trick. Always look confident, even when you're falling apart. She wiped at her eyes. My father taught me that. He taught you well. They sat in silence for a moment. Through the windows, the city spread out beneath them. Millions of lives, millions of stories, all moving forward. Thank you for being here, Claire said quietly. I know you didn't have to. Yeah, I did. Why? Daniel thought about Emma saying people protect each other, about the way Claire had looked at the diner, finally herself, about the kiss on his cheek that still felt warm. Because you asked, he said simply, and because I'm starting to think you might be worth the trouble. Claire smiled, real and tired and beautiful. Might be? Jury's still out. Fair enough. Rachel knocked on the door. Here? EC is on line 1, Attorney General on line 2, and about 30 reporters want statements. Claire stood, smoothing her suit. The CEO mask slipped back into place, but not quite as perfectly as before. Daniel could still see the person underneath. I have to deal with this, she said. I know. Will you? She hesitated. Will you wait? I should be done in a few hours, and I'd like to, I don't know, not be alone. Daniel thought about his garage, his normal life, all the reasons he should walk away right now. Yeah, he said, I'll wait. Claire disappeared into her office with Rachel trailing behind, already fielding calls. Daniel found himself alone in the conference room with a view of the city and absolutely no idea what to do with himself. He texted Emma. Meeting went well. Going to be late. Love you. The response came immediately. Did Claire win? Yeah, she won. I knew it. Mrs. Rodriguez owes me $5. You bet on this? She said you'd chicken out and come home early. I said you'd stay because you like Claire. I don't... Daniel stopped typing. Did he like Claire? That seemed like a massive understatement for whatever was happening here. Tell Mrs. Rodriguez she raised you wrong. She says you're deflecting. She's probably right. Be good. I'll see you tonight. Bring Claire. Absolutely not. Bring her. Daniel put his phone away before Emma could continue that line of argument. He wandered out into the hallway, feeling ridiculous in his button-up, among people in designer suits rushing past with tablets and urgent expressions. A break room sat at the end of the hall, coffee station, vending machines, windows overlooking a different angle of the city. Daniel poured himself something that claimed to be coffee but tasted like ambition and desperation, and settled into a chair to wait. He'd been there maybe 20 minutes when a man in his early 40s walked in, spotted Daniel, and stopped. "You're the mechanic," the man said. "Word travels fast. This building runs on gossip and caffeine." The man grabbed a cup and poured his own coffee. "I'm David Chen, Chief Financial Officer. Daniel Brooks." "I know, everyone knows. You're the guy Claire brought to humiliate Marcus Whitmore, and then you showed up to today's bloodbath." David sat down across from him. "People are very interested in who you are. Just someone who knows Claire. Nobody just knows Claire. She doesn't let people close." David studied him. "You must be special. Or stupid. Could be both." David smiled. "For what it's worth, what you did today, being here, it mattered." Hayes was counting on Claire being alone, isolated, easy to break. "She's not easy to break." "No, but she's human, and humans need support." David took a sip of coffee, grimaced. "Fair warning, this place is going to be chaos for the next week. Press, investigations, board restructuring. It's going to get ugly." "Uglier than this morning?" "Different ugly, legal ugly, political ugly." David paused. "Claire's going to be under a microscope. Everything she does, everyone she talks to, it's all going to be scrutinized, including you." Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying if you care about her, and I think you do, you need to be prepared for what comes next. Reporters digging into your life, questions about your relationship, people trying to use you to get to her. We don't have a relationship. Tell that to the photos from Saturday night." "What photos?" David pulled out his phone and showed Daniel a celebrity gossip site. There, in high resolution, was a picture of Claire and Daniel leaving the Ashworth estate together. Another of them at the diner. A third of Claire kissing his cheek on the sidewalk. The headline read, "Montgomery Industries, CEO's Mystery Man." "Oh, hell," Daniel muttered. "It gets better." David scrolled down. "They've already identified you. Daniel Brooks, age 32, single father, owns a garage in the city. They found your daughter's school, your apartment building, your tax returns from 2019. Daniel's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "Emma?" "They have her name, her age, what soccer team she plays for." David's expression was sympathetic. "I'm sorry. This is what happens when you exist near someone like Claire. Privacy becomes theoretical." Daniel stood abruptly. "I need to talk to Claire." "She's in back-to-back calls." "I don't care." He left the break room and headed for Claire's office. Rachel intercepted him halfway there. "Daniel, she's with the Attorney General. Tell her it's urgent." Something in his voice must have convinced her. Rachel knocked on Claire's door, stuck her head in, and emerged 30 seconds later. 2 minutes, she said. Claire appeared in the doorway, phone still pressed to her ear. She saw Daniel's expression and held up one finger. Whoever was on the other end got a very polite but firm goodbye, and then she was pulling Daniel into her office and closing the door. "What's wrong?" Daniel showed her the gossip site. Watched her face go pale as she scrolled through the photos, the information about Emma, the speculation about their relationship. "When did this—" Claire's voice cracked. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they were taking pictures." "It doesn't matter. They found Emma. They know where she goes to school." "I'll fix this." Claire was already dialing. "I'll have my lawyer send cease and desist letters. I'll hire security for her school." "Claire, stop." She looked up, phone halfway to her ear. "You can't fix this," Daniel said quietly. "That's not how this works. The photos are out there. The information is public. And now everyone knows I exist." "I'm so sorry. I never meant for Emma to be exposed like this." "I know, but she is. And I need to figure out what that means." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "David said it's going to get worse, that I need to be prepared for reporters, for people digging into my life." "He's right. Hayes is going to be furious. She'll use anything she can find to hurt me, and that includes... Claire stopped. You. Yeah. They stood there in her pristine office. The city spread out behind her, and Daniel felt the weight of two worlds colliding. I should go, he said. Daniel, I need to talk to Emma. Explain what's happening before someone else does. He met Claire's eyes. And I need to figure out if I can handle this. Because I'm not sure I can. Claire's expression crumpled for just a moment before she caught it. I understand. Do you? Yes. You have a daughter to protect. That comes first. It should come first. Her voice was steady, but Daniel saw her hands shaking. Thank you for today, for being here when I needed someone. It sounded like goodbye. Daniel wanted to say something, that he wasn't walking away just taking a breath, that he needed time to think. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he nodded and left. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. Every floor, Daniel's chest got tighter. By the time he reached the lobby, he was struggling to breathe normally. His truck was where he'd left it, a parking ticket tucked under the wiper. $45 for being in the wrong place. Daniel almost laughed. He drove home on autopilot, his mind racing. Emma's school finished at 3. He had 90 minutes to figure out what to tell her, how to explain that her face was now on the internet because her father had made stupid choices. Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting on the front steps when he pulled up. We need to talk, she said. Daniel's stomach dropped. You saw the photos. Everyone saw the photos. My sister sent them to me at noon. Mrs. Rodriguez followed him upstairs. Daniel, what were you thinking? I was helping someone. You were playing in a world you don't understand, and now Emma's in the middle of it. I know. Daniel unlocked his apartment and collapsed onto the couch. I know, okay? I messed up. Mrs. Rodriguez sat beside him, her voice gentled. Tell me what happened. So he did. All of it. Claire walking into his garage, the engagement party, the board meeting, the photographs. Mrs. Rodriguez listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to understanding to something that looked suspiciously like sympathy. You like her, she said when he finished. That's what Emma said. Emma's a smart kid. It doesn't matter if I like her. I can't. Daniel gestured helplessly. Look at my life. Look at hers. We exist in completely different universes. So did you and Emma's mother. That didn't stop you from trying. And look how that turned out. Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? I think you're scared. This woman is successful, powerful, everything your ex wasn't. And you're afraid that if you let yourself care, it'll end the same way. It will. You don't know that. I know I can't put Emma through that again, having someone come into our lives and then leave. Daniel's voice broke. She was 6 days old, and her mother looked at her like she was a burden. I will not let anyone make Emma feel that way ever again. Has Claire given you any indication she'd do that? Daniel thought about Claire texting Emma about tacos, about the way she'd talked about his daughter, not as an obstacle, but as someone important. No, he admitted. Then maybe you're borrowing trouble that doesn't exist yet. Or maybe I'm being realistic. Realistic is good, but don't use it as an excuse to run from something that scares you. Mrs. Rodriguez stood. I'll pick up Emma from school. You take the afternoon, figure out what you want to say to her. But Daniel, whatever you decide about Claire, make sure it's what you actually want, not what you think you should want. After she left, Daniel sat in the silent apartment and tried to do exactly that. What did he want? A week ago, the answer would have been simple. Keep Emma safe, keep the garage running, keep life manageable and small. Now? Now he had no idea. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. I spoke to my head of security. He's arranging discreet protection for Emma's school. No one will approach her without going through proper channels. And I've had my legal team contact every major outlet. Any further publication of information about her will result in lawsuits. Daniel stared at the message. Claire was already fixing things, protecting Emma, doing what he couldn't. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. It's not your fault that people are invasive. Maybe not. But it's my responsibility to protect the people I... The message stopped. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, The people I care about. Daniel's chest hurt. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "Thank you. Will you let me know how Emma takes the news?" Yeah. Mrs. Rodriguez brought Emma home at 4. His daughter bounced through the door, chattering about her day, completely oblivious to the chaos brewing online. And then Marcus, different Marcus, not your Claire's Marcus, said that unicorns could totally beat dragons if they had armor, which I think is cheating, but Madison said, "Dad, why do you look weird?" Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to figure out how to start this conversation. "I need to talk to you about something." Emma's expression immediately shifted to concern. "Is someone dead?" "What? No, nobody's dead." "Okay, because that's what adults say when someone's dead." "We need to talk." She climbed into the chair across from him. "What's wrong? Remember when I went to that party with Claire?" "Yeah." "Well, someone took pictures of us, and those pictures ended up on the internet." Emma's eyes went wide. "Like famous people pictures?" "Sort of. And because Claire is important, people are interested in who she spends time with, so they looked into me and into you." "Me?" "They found out your name, your age, what school you go to." Daniel watched Emma's face carefully. "I'm sorry, kiddo. I didn't think about this when I agreed to help Claire. I should have." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Are people going to be mean to me?" "I hope not. But some people might ask you questions about me, about Claire. And if that happens, you don't have to answer them. You can tell a teacher and they'll handle it." "Is Claire in trouble?" "No, she just had some people at work who didn't like her and she had to deal with them." "Did she win?" "Yeah, she won." Emma nodded slowly, processing. "Do you like her?" "That's not—" "Dad, do you like her?" Daniel looked at his daughter, 7 years old and already seen through every defense he tried to build. "Yeah, I do." "Does she like you?" "Think so." "Then why do you look so sad?" "Because it's complicated, Em. Her life is very different from ours. She has responsibilities, people depending on her. And I don't know if there's room in that life for us." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were small and sticky from whatever snack Mrs. Rodriguez had given her. "Mom left because she didn't want to make room. That's different from someone who can't." Daniel felt something break in his chest. "When did you get so smart?" "I told you, I've always been smart." Emma squeezed his hand. "You should call Claire." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. You like her. She likes you. She protected me even though she didn't have to. That means she's good people." Emma used his own phrase back at him. "And you're always saying we don't turn our back on good people." "I also say we don't take unnecessary risks." "You took a risk on me." "That's different. You're my daughter." Yeah, but you could have given me up." "Lots of people said you should. And you didn't because you thought I was worth the risk." Emma's voice was matter of fact. "Maybe Claire's worth the risk too." Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug, burying his face in her hair. She smelled like grass and juice boxes and home. "What did I do to deserve you?" he whispered. "You showed up," Emma said simply. "That's all anyone really wants." That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel sat on the balcony and stared at his phone. Claire hadn't texted again. He imagined her in her office or her apartment or wherever successful CEOs went after dismantling their enemies. Probably not cramped balconies in buildings that needed new paint. He opened their text thread and started typing. "Emma knows about the photos. She handled it better than I did." The response came within seconds. "Is she okay?" "Yeah, she's worried about you." "About me?" "She asked if you were in trouble." "If you won." "She's very invested in your success." "She sounds wonderful." "She is." "She also thinks I'm an idiot for not calling you. Is she right?" Daniel smiled despite himself. "Probably. For what it's worth, I think you're being smart. Protecting Emma, thinking things through." A pause, then, "I just wish the thing you were thinking through had a better chance of working out." "Who says it doesn't?" "Daniel, look at my life. Look at what happened today. Reporters, investigations, people digging through everything. That's not going to stop. And I can't ask you to bring Emma into that. What if you didn't ask? What if I chose it? Why would you choose this?" Because Emma's right. You're good people. And we don't turn our back on good people. The three dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then his phone rang. Daniel answered. Hi. Hi. Claire's voice was rough, like she'd been crying, or shouting at attorneys, possibly both. I can't promise this gets easier. The scrutiny, the attention, the constant pressure. That's my normal. I know. And I can't promise I won't mess this up. I'm terrible at relationships. I work too much. I forget to call. I get obsessed with problems and disappear into work. Okay? And there are going to be people, powerful people, who will try to use you or Emma to hurt me. That's just how this world works. I'm getting that. So knowing all of that, why would you... Her voice broke. Why would you want this? Daniel looked out at the city lights, at the world Claire lived in that was so different from his. Because in the past week, I've watched you be terrified and brave at the same time. I've seen you stand up to people who wanted to destroy everything you care about. I've seen you protect my daughter without me asking. And I've seen you eat pancakes at a diner like it was the best meal you'd ever had. He paused. You're real, Claire. In a way most people aren't, and I think that's worth fighting for. Silence on the other end. Then very quietly, I'm scared. Of what? That you'll figure out I'm not worth it. That the reality of my life will be too much. That I'll disappoint you. She took a shaky breath. That you'll leave, and it'll hurt more than anything else has. Claire, I'm a single dad who fixes cars for a living. I have a 7-year-old who's smarter than me and a bank account that makes me nervous every month. I'm probably going to disappoint you first. That's not possible. Sure it is. I don't know how to be in your world. I'm going to make mistakes, say the wrong thing, embarrass you. You could never embarrass me. Give it time. She laughed, watery but real. So what do we do? I don't know. Figure it out as we go? Daniel stood and walked to the edge of the balcony. Emma wants to meet you, properly, not just texts about tacos. She does? She says anyone who protects her is good people. And apparently that means you get invited to dinner. Dinner? Nothing fancy, probably tacos, knowing Emma. But if you want to see what you're getting into, that's a good place to start. When? Tomorrow? If you're free. I'll make myself free. Claire's voice strengthened. What time? 6. And Claire, come as yourself. Not the CEO, not the person you think we want to see. Just you. I'm not sure I know who that is anymore. Then we'll figure that out too. After they hung up, Daniel stood on the balcony for a long time. Mrs. Rodriguez was right. He was scared, terrified actually, of opening his life to someone who could break it. But Emma was also right. Some risks were worth taking. He just hoped this was one of them. The next day crawled by with painful slowness. Daniel had 3 oil changes, 1 brake job, and a transmission that made noises no transmission should make. He worked mechanically, his mind elsewhere. Emma had insisted on helping clean the apartment after school, which meant she moved things from one surface to another while providing commentary on Daniel's life choices. Should we have flowers? She asked. It's tacos, not a wedding. Mrs. Rodriguez says flowers show you care. Mrs. Rodriguez is very invested in my personal life. Someone has to be. Emma moved a stack of mail from the counter to the table. What if Claire doesn't like our apartment? Then she doesn't have to stay. Dad, you can't say that. Why not? Because it sounds like you don't care and you definitely care. Emma pointed at him. Your hands are shaking. Daniel looked down. She was right. That's just low blood sugar. Uh-huh. Should I make a salad? You're 7. I can make a salad. You just put things in a bowl. That's not how salads work. Sure it is. Lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, done. Daniel was about to argue when his phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Is it okay if I bring something? I feel weird showing up empty-handed. You don't need to bring anything. I'm bringing something anyway. Any allergies I should know about? Emma's allergic to boring people. Otherwise, we're good. Then I'll try to be interesting. At 5:55, Daniel heard a knock on the door. Emma raced to answer it before he could stop her. Claire stood in the hallway wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair down, no makeup. She looked younger than she had at the board meeting, more uncertain. In her hands was a bakery box and what looked like a bottle of wine. "Hi," she said. "I'm Claire." Emma studied her with the serious intensity only 7-year-olds could manage. "Did you really text my dad about tacos?" "I did. Tacos are important." "That's what I said." Emma stepped back to let Claire in. "You can come in. Dad's nervous but trying to hide it." "Emma," Daniel protested from the kitchen. "What?" "You are." Claire smiled and stepped inside. The apartment must have looked impossibly small to her, cramped and worn, and nothing like the world she lived in. But when she looked around, her expression wasn't judgmental, just curious. "This is nice," she said. "You don't have to lie," Daniel said. "I'm not. It feels like a home. Mine just feels like a place I sleep sometimes." Claire set the bakery box on the counter. "I brought dessert. The woman at the bakery said these were the best brownies in the city, but I'm skeptical. I think the best brownies are probably homemade." "I like her," Emma announced. "She can stay." "That's not your decision," Daniel said. "Sure it is. This is my house too." Claire laughed, and the sound filled the small kitchen with something warm. "Thank you for having me, both of you." They made tacos together, which meant Emma provided running commentary while Daniel cooked and Claire tried to help without getting in the way. She was terrible at it, cutting vegetables into pieces that were all different sizes, spilling salsa on the counter, apologizing every 30 seconds. "I'm not usually this useless," she said. "You're not useless. You're just not used to cooking." Daniel handed her a towel. "When's the last time you made dinner?" "Define dinner." "Food that you prepared yourself." Claire thought about it. "College. Maybe." "What do you eat normally?" "Whatever Rachel orders, or whatever's at meetings, or I forget to eat and then eat an entire bag of chips at midnight." Emma gasped. "That's so sad." "It's efficient." "It's sad," Emma insisted. "Right, Dad?" "Your daughter has opinions," Claire observed. "She gets that from me." They ate at the small kitchen table, knees bumping in the cramped space. Claire asked Emma about school, about soccer, about her thoughts on the eternal unicorn versus dragon debate. Emma answered with enthusiasm, occasionally kicking Daniel under the table when she thought he wasn't contributing enough. For someone who ran a $70 billion company, Claire was remarkably good at talking to a 7-year-old. She didn't condescend or simplify. She just listened like Emma's opinions mattered. After dinner, Emma insisted Claire needed to see her room. Daniel stayed in the kitchen, cleaning up and trying not to listen to his daughter thoroughly interrogate their guest about everything from favorite colors to whether she thought teachers should assign homework on weekends. When they emerged, Emma was holding Claire's hand. "Claire says homework on weekends is cruel and unusual punishment," Emma announced. "Claire's going to get you in trouble with your teacher." "I said age-appropriate amounts of homework," Claire clarified, "not none." "That's basically the same thing," Emma argued. They moved to the living room. Emma sprawled on the floor with a coloring book she was definitely too old for, but refused to abandon. Daniel and Claire sat on the couch, not quite touching, but aware of every inch of space between them. "She's wonderful," Claire said quietly. "Yeah, she is. You did that. Raised her to be confident and kind and completely herself. I mostly just tried not to mess her up too badly." "You did more than that." Claire watched Emma color with intense concentration. "She feels safe, loved. That's not nothing." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Emma finished her coloring and brought it over to show Claire, a picture of a unicorn fighting a dragon to a draw, both looking respectful of each other. "It's a compromise," Emma explained. "They're both powerful, so they decide to be friends instead of fighting." "Very diplomatic," Claire said seriously. "I'm advanced for my age." At 7:30, Emma started yawning. Daniel sent her to get ready for bed, which she protested until Claire promised to come say goodnight. While Emma brushed her teeth, Claire helped Daniel finish cleaning up. They worked in easy silence, and Daniel tried not to think about how natural this felt. The two of them in his kitchen, doing something as simple as washing dishes. "Thank you for tonight," Claire said, "for letting me be part of this. Thank you for coming, for being yourself." "Is this who I am? I'm not sure anymore." "You're whoever you want to be. CEO, Claire, Diner Claire, Coloring Book Claire, all of them are real." She smiled. "I like Coloring Book Claire. She's less stressful." Emma called from her bedroom. Claire, you promised. They went in together. Emma was already under her covers, her stuffed elephant tucked beside her. Tell me a story, Emma demanded. I don't know any stories, Claire said. Yes, you do. Tell me about when you were little. Claire sat on the edge of Emma's bed. When I was about your age, my dad used to take me to his office on Saturdays. Everyone else would be gone, and we'd have the whole building to ourselves. What did you do? We'd race office chairs down the hallways. He'd let me use the big photocopier to make copies of my hands. And he'd tell me that someday all of this would be mine, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. Claire's voice got quiet. He said the most important thing wasn't making money. It was making sure the people who worked for you could go home and tuck their own kids into bed every night. Emma considered this. He sounds nice? He was. He would have liked you. Would he have liked my dad? Claire looked at Daniel, something unreadable in her expression. Yeah, I think he would have. Emma yawned hugely. You should come back next week. We'll see, Daniel said. That's parent code for yes, Emma told Claire. I'll keep that in mind. They left Emma to sleep. In the living room, Claire gathered her things, moving slowly like she wasn't ready to leave. I should go, she said, not moving toward the door. Yeah. I have early meetings tomorrow. Okay. And I'm sure you need to… Claire. She looked at him. Do you want to leave? Daniel asked. No, but I probably should. Those are different things. I know. She twisted the strap of her purse. I don't want to mess this up, whatever this is. What if there's no way to mess it up? What if we just see where it goes? That's terrifying. Yeah, but maybe worth it? Claire stepped closer. They were standing in his cramped living room, surrounded by secondhand furniture and Emma's scattered toys, and somehow it felt more important than any boardroom or gala. I'm going to disappoint you, Claire said. Probably. I'm definitely going to disappoint you. So we're both going into this expecting failure? Or we're going in realistic? Daniel reached for her hand. Her fingers were cold. No promises we can't keep. No expectations we can't meet. Just honesty. I can do honesty. Good. Because I honestly have no idea what I'm doing. That makes two of us. They stood there, hands linked, and Daniel felt something shift. Not into place. Nothing about this was simple enough for that, but into possibility. Come to dinner again, he said. Next week. Okay. And maybe call sometimes, when you're stressed or tired or just want to talk. You want me to call you? Yeah, I do. Claire's smile was small but real. Okay. She left a few minutes later. Daniel watched from the window as she got into her car, not the luxury sedan, but something smaller, more normal. She looked up before driving away, and he waved. Emma appeared at his elbow in her pajamas. You like her a lot. Go to bed. You're smiling. You never smile like that. I smile. Not like that. Emma hugged his waist. It's okay to be happy, Dad. You're allowed. Daniel looked down at his daughter, wise beyond her years and absolutely determined to manage his emotional well-being. When did you get so smart? He asked. I keep telling you, I've always been smart. You just started listening. She went back to bed. Daniel stood at the window for a long time, watching the city lights, thinking about Claire driving home to whatever empty apartment waited for her. His phone buzzed. Thank you for tonight. Emma's amazing. You're amazing. I'm still terrified, but maybe that's okay. Daniel smiled and typed back. Terror's just excitement with worse PR. See you next week. Can't wait. He went to bed that night feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hopeful. Scared, definitely. Uncertain about everything. But hopeful that maybe, just maybe, some risks were worth taking after all. The week that followed felt like learning to breathe in a new atmosphere. Claire called on Tuesday night at 11, apologizing for the late hour, her voice rough with exhaustion. She'd been in meetings since 7 that morning, dealing with the fallout from Hayes' removal and the SEC investigation. Tell me something normal, she said. Please. I need to remember what that feels like. Daniel was on the couch, half asleep. Emma's math homework still spread across the coffee table. Emma spent 20 minutes today arguing with her teacher about whether penguins are technically birds. What was her position? That they're aquatic birds, which is a completely different category and should be taught separately. She's not wrong. That's what I said. Her teacher was less convinced. Claire laughed, and Daniel could hear the tension leaving her voice. They talked for another hour about nothing important. Emma's soccer practice, a transmission Daniel couldn't figure out, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Normal things. Human things. She called again on Thursday, and Saturday morning, and Sunday evening when Emma was in the bath and Daniel was trying to figure out how to explain fractions. "You're terrible at math," Claire observed after Daniel's third failed attempt to make division make sense. "I can rebuild an engine blindfolded. Numbers are different. Want me to talk her through it? You know fractions? I have an MBA. I better know fractions." So Claire spent 20 minutes on speakerphone teaching Emma about numerators and denominators using pizza slices as examples, and Emma understood immediately in a way that made Daniel feel both proud and slightly inadequate. "Your girlfriend's smart," Emma said after they hung up. "She's not my girlfriend." "What is she?" "Good question." Daniel still didn't have an answer. Wednesday of the following week, Claire texted him at 2 in the afternoon. "Emergency. Can you meet me?" Daniel's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. I need to not be in this building for an hour or I'm going to set something on fire." "Where?" "Your garage, if that's okay. I can bring lunch." Daniel looked around his workspace. Oil stains on the concrete, parts scattered everywhere, the persistent smell of grease and gasoline. Not exactly the environment for a CEO. "Come over." "Fair warning, it's a mess." "I don't care." She arrived 45 minutes later carrying takeout bags and looking like she'd been through a war. Her hair was falling out of its bun, her blazer had a coffee stain on the sleeve, and her eyes had the slightly manic quality of someone running on caffeine and spite. "Hey," Daniel said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Hi." Claire set the bags on his workbench, narrowly avoiding a carburetor. "I brought Thai food. I didn't know what you liked, so I got everything." "What happened?" "The board approved restructuring. Hayes' allies are out. We're implementing new ethics guidelines. Stock's up 8%. She said it all in one breath. "And I feel like I'm drowning." Daniel pulled over 2 stools. "Sit, eat, tell me about it." So she did. While they ate pad thai out of containers, Claire talked about the pressure of rebuilding her board, the constant scrutiny from shareholders, the fear that one wrong move would prove everyone right about her being too young. She talked until her food got cold and her voice went hoarse. Daniel listened, didn't try to fix it, didn't offer solutions, just listened. "Sorry," Claire said finally, "you didn't sign up for this." "Actually, I'm pretty sure I did. Dinner with Emma, remember? That was the agreement. Dinner, not therapy sessions in your garage. Consider it a bonus feature." Daniel handed her a bottle of water from his mini fridge. "You want actual advice or just someone to tell you you're not crazy?" "The second one. You're not crazy. You're exhausted. There's a difference." Claire smiled weakly. "Thank you. Also, you should probably eat actual meals instead of whatever Rachel orders." "Rachel orders good food." "Rachel orders efficient food. That's different." Daniel started packing up the empty containers. "Come to dinner tomorrow. Real dinner. I'll cook something that isn't tacos." "You don't have to." "I know. I want to." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why are you so nice to me?" "Because you need someone to be. And because Emma will never forgive me if I don't invite you back." "Just Emma?" "Mostly Emma. She's more socially competent than I am." Claire laughed, real and surprised. "Okay, tomorrow, but I'm bringing wine." "You don't have to bring wine." "I'm bringing wine anyway. That's my bonus feature." The next evening, Claire showed up at 6:15 with 2 bottles of wine and an apology for being late. Emma answered the door wearing an apron that said "Kiss the Cook" and informed Claire that they were making spaghetti and she was in charge of sauce tasting. "That's a very important job," Claire said seriously. "I know. Dad said I have a sophisticated palate." "I said you'd eat anything." "Same thing." They cooked together in the small kitchen, bumping into each other, laughing when Claire dropped an entire box of pasta on the floor. Emma appointed herself head chef and directed them both with the confidence of someone who'd watched exactly 3 cooking shows. After dinner, while Daniel cleaned up, Emma convinced Claire to help with her school project, a poster about inspirational women in history. "Who are you doing?" Claire asked. "I was going to do Amelia Earhart, but everyone does her. I want someone different." "What about Katherine Johnson?" "She was a mathematician who helped NASA send astronauts to space." Emma's eyes lit up. "Did she really?" "She did. The calculations for the moon landing, she did those by hand." "That's so cool. Can you help me research her?" They spent the next hour at the kitchen table, Claire pulling up articles on her phone while Emma took notes in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. Daniel watched from the kitchen, ostensibly doing dishes but mostly just observing the way Claire explained orbital mechanics to his daughter, using a salt shaker and a pepper grinder as props. When Emma finally went to bed, after extracting a promise from Claire to come back and see the finished poster, Daniel walked Claire to her car. "She's going to be running the world someday," Claire said. "Probably. I just hope she remembers where she came from. With you as her dad? Not a chance she forgets." They stood in the parking lot, neither quite ready to say goodnight. Above them, the city lights drowned out most of the stars, but a few persistent ones shone through. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "Sure." "Why haven't you kissed me yet?" Daniel's brain short-circuited. "What?" "We've had 3 dinners, multiple phone calls. You hold my hand sometimes, but you haven't kissed me." She wasn't looking at him. "Is it because you don't want to? Because if you don't, that's fine. Claire," she stopped. "I haven't kissed you because I'm terrified," Daniel said quietly. "Because once I do, this becomes real. And real means it can break. And I'm not sure I can handle that. You think I'm not terrified? I haven't done this in years, and never with someone who actually matters. I matter. Are you kidding? You're the only person in my life who sees me as just Claire. Not the CEO, not Thomas Montgomery's daughter, not a symbol of anything. Just me." Her voice cracked. "So yes, you matter." Daniel reached for her hand. "I don't know how to do this. I'm going to mess up, say the wrong thing, disappoint you." "Good, because I'm a disaster at relationships. I work too much, I forget important things, I disappear into my own head." She squeezed his fingers. "We can be disasters together." "That's possibly the least romantic thing anyone's ever said. I'm not good at romance." "Neither am I." They stood there in the parking lot of Daniel's building, holding hands like teenagers, both of them too scared to move. "If I kiss you," Daniel said, "and this doesn't work out, then we'll deal with it, like adults, without destroying each other." Claire stepped closer. "But what if it does work out? Is that an option?" "I don't know, but I'd like to find out." Daniel kissed her, soft and tentative, and nothing like the dramatic movie kisses Emma was probably imagining from her bedroom window. Just 2 people who were scared and hopeful and willing to try. When they pulled apart, Claire was smiling. "That wasn't so terrible," she said. "Wow, romance really isn't your strong suit. I'm working on it." She left shortly after, and Daniel went back upstairs to find Emma asleep, but definitely wearing the smile of someone who'd been watching from the window. "You're supposed to be sleeping," he said. "I was resting my eyes." "Did you kiss her?" "None of your business." "You totally did. Your face is all red." "Go to sleep, Emma. This is the best day ever." The following weeks fell into a rhythm. Claire came to dinner twice a week, Wednesdays and Sundays. Sometimes she stayed late, helping Emma with homework or just talking with Daniel about everything and nothing. Sometimes she had to leave early for calls with overseas offices or emergency board meetings. She missed 2 dinners because of crises at work. The first time she called 3 hours late, nearly in tears with apology. The second time she showed up at midnight with takeout and an explanation that Daniel barely understood about supply chain disruptions in Southeast Asia. "You could have just called," he said, letting her in. "I wanted to see you. Is that okay?" "Yeah, it's okay." They ate Chinese food on his couch at 1 in the morning, talking in whispers so they wouldn't wake Emma. Claire fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, and Daniel didn't have the heart to wake her. He covered her with a blanket and let her sleep. She woke at 5, disoriented and apologizing. "I have a meeting at 7. I need to go home and change and—" "Claire, breathe." She stopped, took a breath. You fell asleep. That's allowed. You don't have to apologize for being human. I feel like I'm always apologizing to you. Then stop. I'm not keeping score. She kissed him goodbye, soft and quick, and left. Daniel watched the sunrise alone, thinking about how strange his life had become and how okay he was with that. A month into whatever they were calling this, Marcus showed up at Daniel's garage. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Daniel was under a Honda Civic when he heard the door chime. He rolled out to find Marcus standing in his workspace, looking around with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" Daniel asked, staying on his back. "I wanted to see what Claire saw in this place. In you." Marcus's tone was conversational, but his eyes were cold. "I have to admit, I'm still confused." "That's rough. You need a mechanic, or are you just here to waste my time?" "I'm here to give you advice, man to man." Daniel sat up, wiping his hands. "I don't need advice." "You do. You just don't know it yet." Marcus stepped closer. "Claire's good at making people feel special, like they matter, like they're different from everyone else. But you're not different. You're just convenient." "Is there a point to this?" "The point is that eventually she'll get bored. She'll realize you can't give her what she needs, connection, status, someone who understands her world. And she'll leave." Marcus's smile was sharp, just like she left me. "She didn't leave you. She turned down your proposal because you wanted her to be smaller. That's different." "And you think you want her to be big? You think you can handle dating someone more successful, more intelligent, more important than you'll ever be?" Daniel stood. He had 4 inches and 30 pounds on Marcus, and he used both. "Here's the thing about Claire. She doesn't need someone to handle her. She needs someone who shows up, who doesn't run when things get hard, who sees her as a person, not a trophy or a problem to fix." He stepped closer. "Can you honestly say you ever did that?" Marcus's expression flickered. "You don't know anything about us. I know she's happier now than she was at your engagement party. I know she laughs more, sleeps better, actually eats meals instead of working through them." Daniel crossed his arms. "So yeah, maybe I can't give her the connections or status you're talking about, but I can give her something you never did, a place where she doesn't have to perform. That won't be enough. Eventually she'll decide what she wants, and whether I'm enough or not is her choice, not yours." Daniel walked back to the Honda. "Now get out of my garage." Marcus stood there for another moment, then turned and left without another word. Daniel didn't tell Claire about the visit, not because he was hiding it, but because Marcus didn't deserve the energy. But that night, when Claire called during her break between meetings, he held the phone a little tighter. "You okay?" she asked. "You sound weird." "Just thinking." About how different our lives are. Whether that matters." Claire was quiet for a moment. "Does it matter to you?" "I don't know. Sometimes I think it does. That eventually you're going to wake up and realize I'm just a mechanic who can barely help his kid with math homework." "Daniel, I'm a CEO who survived on coffee and spite before I met you, who forgot what it felt like to laugh, who was so lonely I asked a stranger to be my fake date because I had no one else to ask." Her voice softened. "You didn't save me, but you reminded me what it feels like to be human instead of just functional. That's not nothing. It feels like nothing compared to what you do. Running a company, changing lives, actually making a difference. You make a difference. Emma's proof of that. And honestly, coming to your apartment, eating tacos, helping with math homework, that's the best part of my week. Every week." She paused. "I don't need you to be anything other than what you are. I just need you to keep showing up." "I can do that." "Good, because I'm not going anywhere either." 2 months in, Claire invited them to her apartment for the first time. Emma was vibrating with excitement the entire drive over. "Do you think she has a pool?" Emma asked. "Probably not. A movie theater?" It's an apartment, not a theme park. Rich people have weird stuff. Madison's aunt has a room just for shoes." "That's actually not that weird." Claire's building was in the nicest part of downtown. Doorman, marble lobby, elevator that required a key card. Her apartment was on the 34th floor and had floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the entire city. Emma's jaw dropped. "This is so cool." The apartment was beautiful in that catalog-perfect way. Modern furniture, carefully chosen art, everything in its place. It also felt profoundly empty. "Sorry, it's kind of impersonal," Claire said, suddenly self-conscious. "I'm not here much." "It's beautiful," Daniel said, and meant it. But he also noticed there were no photos, no personal touches, nothing that indicated someone actually lived here. Claire had ordered dinner from an expensive restaurant. They ate at her dining table, which could seat 12, but currently held 3 place settings and takeout containers. After dinner, Emma asked for a tour. Claire showed them her office, a second bedroom converted into a workspace with 3 monitors and enough paperwork to start a fire. Then the guest room, which had clearly never been used. Finally, her bedroom, which was as impersonal as the rest of the apartment. "Where's your stuff?" Emma asked. "What stuff?" "Like pictures and books and things that matter." Claire looked around as if seeing the space for the first time. "I guess I never got around to decorating." "You've lived here how long?" Daniel asked. 3 years? Claire. "I know, it's pathetic. She trailed off. "I didn't want to get comfortable. Didn't want to admit this was permanent." "Is it?" Daniel asked quietly. "Permanent? I don't know. Some days I think about selling the company, walking away. Other days I remember why my father built it, and I can't imagine doing anything else." She sat on the edge of her bed. "Nothing feels permanent except—" She stopped. "Except what?" Emma prompted. "Except Wednesdays and Sundays. Those feel permanent." Claire looked at Daniel. "Knowing I'm going to see you two, that's the only thing I plan for anymore. Everything else is just obligations." Emma climbed onto the bed beside Claire. "You should come over more than twice a week. Your dad might get tired of me." "Nah, he smiles at his phone when you text. It's gross, but also cute." "Emma," Daniel protested. "What?" "You do." Claire smiled. "What if I came over more? Would that be okay?" "It's your life," Daniel said. "Come over whenever you want." "Even if it's 4 in the morning because I can't sleep?" "Especially then." She did show up at 4 in the morning once, 2 weeks later. Daniel was already awake, insomnia and too many thoughts, when he heard the knock. He opened the door to find Claire in sweatpants and one of his old hoodies that she'd stolen 3 weeks ago. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Me neither." They sat on his cramped balcony, sharing bad coffee and watching the city wake up. Claire talked about a deal that was falling apart, about board members second-guessing her decisions, about the weight of carrying her father's legacy. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing any of this right," she admitted. "If he'd be proud or disappointed." "He'd be proud," Daniel said with certainty. "How do you know?" "Because you care. You could have taken the easy path, cut costs, maximized profits, given shareholders what they wanted. Instead, you're fighting to protect workers, maintain ethics, build something that lasts. That takes courage. It takes stubbornness. Same thing." Claire leaned against him and they watched the sun come up together. She fell asleep again, head on his shoulder, and Daniel let her rest until Emma's alarm went off at 7. The shift happened so gradually that Daniel almost didn't notice. Claire's toothbrush appeared in his bathroom, then a change of clothes in his closet, her favorite coffee in his kitchen. Small invasions that felt like home. Emma noticed. "Is Claire moving in?" "No, she's just here sometimes." "Her stuff is everywhere, Dad." "It's a few things." "She has a drawer." Daniel looked at the drawer in question. When had that happened? "She needed somewhere to put things." "Uh-huh. So when's she officially moving in?" "She's not. She has her own place." "The place she hates, that has no pictures or books or anything that makes it feel like home?" Emma gave him a look. "Versus here, where her stuff already is and she sleeps over half the week anyway." "You're 7. How are you this observant?" "Someone has to manage your life." 3 months in, Claire's board threw her a surprise celebration for the company's best quarterly results in 5 years. She brought Daniel and Emma as her guests, which raised eyebrows but fewer than Daniel expected. Rachel pulled him aside during the cocktail hour. "You're good for her. She's different since she met you." "Different how?" "Present. Like she's actually living her life instead of just surviving it." Rachel smiled. "Don't mess this up." "No pressure." "Oh, tons of pressure. but I think you can handle it. Daniel watched Claire across the room, laughing with board members, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her in a professional setting. Emma was charming everyone within a 10-foot radius, explaining her Katherine Johnson poster to anyone who'd listen. David Chen appeared beside him. Your daughter's going to run a Fortune 500 company someday. Probably. Hopefully she'll be less stressed about it than Claire. Claire's not stressed anymore. That's the difference. David nodded toward where Claire was standing. 6 months ago she was drowning. Now she's thriving. That's on you. That's on her. I just showed up. Showing up is 80% of the job. The other 20% is not running when things get hard. Is it going to get hard? Probably, but I don't think you'll run. He was right about things getting hard. A week later, an investigative journalist published an article about Hayes' corruption and Claire's role in exposing it. The article was fair, accurate, and positioned Claire as a hero, which meant Hayes' lawyers immediately threatened to sue for defamation. Claire spent 3 days in emergency meetings with attorneys. She missed both Wednesday and Sunday dinners, calling each time with exhausted apologies. I understand, Daniel said, because he did. Just take care of yourself. I'm trying. Are you eating? Define eating. Claire. I had coffee this morning. That counts. That absolutely doesn't count. The next day, Daniel showed up at her office at noon with actual lunch. Rachel waved him through without question, and he found Claire in her office surrounded by documents, her eyes bloodshot from staring at screens. You need to eat, he said, setting down the food. I don't have time. Make time, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. She ate mechanically, barely tasting the food, while explaining the legal situation. Hayes was claiming Claire had manufactured evidence, that the corruption charges were retaliation for Hayes questioning her leadership. It's all lies, Claire said, but lies take time to disprove, and time I don't have. What happens if she wins? Best case? Years of litigation. Worst case? The board loses confidence and I'm out. She set down her fork. I'm so tired, Daniel. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Daniel moved around the desk and pulled her into a hug. She resisted for half a second before collapsing against him. You can do this as long as you need to, he said quietly, but you don't have to do it alone. You can't help with this. It's legal, complicated. I can make sure you eat, make sure you sleep, remind you why you're fighting. He pulled back to look at her. That's what I can do. Let me do it. She kissed him, hard and desperate and grateful. Okay. The legal battle dragged on for 6 weeks. During that time, Daniel became Claire's anchor to normal life. He brought her lunch twice a week, dragged her out of the office for walks, refused to let her work past 10 at night. Emma sent her encouraging texts, usually featuring terrible puns and pictures of her completed Katherine Johnson poster. Finally, in early December, Hayes' lawyers dropped the lawsuit. The evidence was too strong, the case too clear. Hayes issued a statement about pursuing other opportunities and disappeared from public life. Claire called Daniel from her office at midnight. It's over. Yeah? Yeah. She's done. It's over. How do you feel? Exhausted, relieved, like I can finally breathe. A pause. Can I come over? Always. She arrived 40 minutes later, still in her work clothes, mascara smudged from crying. Daniel pulled her inside and just held her while she shook with the release of months of tension. I did it, she whispered. I actually did it. You did. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you think. Maybe, but it would have been a lot harder and a lot lonelier. They stood in his apartment holding each other, and Daniel felt something settle. This was real. Complicated and imperfect and absolutely real. Emma appeared in her doorway, rubbing her eyes. Is Claire okay? Yeah, kiddo, she's okay. Good. Can she stay over? It's really late. Daniel looked at Claire, who nodded. Yeah, she can stay. Emma went back to bed satisfied. Daniel lent Claire clothes to sleep in, his shirt, her stolen sweatpants, and they collapsed onto his bed fully clothed. This is the most comfortable I've been in months, Claire mumbled into his pillow. My bed or my company? Both. They fell asleep tangled together, and when Daniel woke at 7, Claire was still there. still real, still his. The holidays arrived, bringing questions about where they'd spend them. Claire initially planned to work through Christmas, no family, no traditions, just another day, until Emma invited her to spend it with them. "You should come over," Emma said during one of their Wednesday dinners. "We make cinnamon rolls and watch old movies, and it's really fun." I don't want to intrude. "You're not intruding. You're family." Claire's eyes went bright with tears. "Family? Well, yeah. You're here all the time. You help with my homework. You make my dad smile." Emma shrugged. "That's basically family." Claire looked at Daniel, who nodded. "She's not wrong." "Okay," Claire said quietly. "I'd love to come." Christmas morning was chaos in the best way. Emma woke them up at 6, demanding they open presents immediately. They made cinnamon rolls together, Claire proving she was just as bad at baking as she was at cooking. They watched old movies and ate too much food and laughed until they cried. Claire gave Emma a telescope because apparently teaching a 7-year-old about orbital mechanics meant getting her interested in astronomy. Emma gave Claire a framed photo of the three of them from Thanksgiving, the first personal photograph Claire had received in years. She stared at it for a long time, not speaking. "Do you like it?" Emma asked nervously. "I love it," Claire whispered. "Thank you." That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel and Claire sat on the balcony wrapped in blankets against the cold. "I've never had a Christmas like this," Claire said. "Family Christmases were always formal. Catered dinners, expensive gifts, people performing happiness. This was pretty informal. Sorry about that." "Don't apologize. This was perfect." She leaned against him. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize this is too much work, or I'm too complicated, or—" "Claire," she stopped. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not Marcus. I'm not Hayes. I'm not anyone who's hurt you before. I'm just me. A mechanic who's somehow fallen for a brilliant, complicated CEO who can't cook and works too much and makes my daughter laugh." He kissed her forehead. "And I'm all in, for as long as you'll have me. What if it's forever?" "Then forever it is." She kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. 6 months later, Claire stood in front of her board and announced she was stepping back from day-to-day operations. She'd remained CEO, but she was promoting David Chen to Chief Operating Officer and delegating more authority. "I spent 2 years fighting to prove I could do this job," she told them. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I wanted it. My father didn't build this company to consume his life. He built it to support the life he wanted. Time with family, pursuing what mattered, being present." She looked around the table. "I'm choosing to be present, for the people I love, for the life I want to build. This company will be stronger for it." The board approved unanimously. That night, Claire showed up at Daniel's apartment with her car loaded with boxes. "So," she said, "Emma mentioned you have a drawer available." Daniel stared at her. "Are you moving in? If that's okay. I know it's fast and the apartment is small and Emma might not. Emma's been planning your room for 3 months. She has a whole Pinterest board." "She what?" Emma appeared in the doorway. "You're here. Finally. Come see what I picked out for your side of Dad's closet." Claire looked at Daniel, tears in her eyes. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." They moved her in over the weekend. Claire's pristine apartment got listed for sale, and suddenly Daniel's cramped space was filled with her things, books and photos and all the pieces of herself she'd been storing away. The apartment got more crowded, but also more alive. Emma helped arrange everything, insisting that Claire's clothes needed proper organization and her books should be alphabetized. Claire followed every instruction with the seriousness of someone receiving mission-critical orders. "Your daughter's very particular," she observed. "Wonder where she gets that from," Daniel said, watching Claire rearrange her sweaters for the 3rd time. "I have no idea what you're implying." They made it work. Claire still worked long hours sometimes, still had board meetings and crises and responsibilities, but she came home. To their apartment, their family, their life. Daniel kept fixing cars. Emma kept conquering 3rd grade and planning her future empire. And Claire learned to cook breakfast, badly, but with enthusiasm, and helped with homework and showed up to every soccer game. One Sunday morning, 8 months after moving in, Daniel woke to find Claire already awake, staring at the ceiling. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm happy," she said, like she was testing the words. Actually, genuinely happy. Is that allowed? Yeah, that's allowed. It feels weird, like I'm forgetting something important. You're not. You're just not used to things being good. They are good, though, aren't they? Daniel pulled her closer. Yeah, they're really good. I love you, Claire said, first time she'd said it out loud. I love you too. And Emma. She loves you too, probably more than she loves me. That's not true? She told me last week you're the best thing that ever happened to us. Her words, not mine. Claire's breath hitched. She said that? She did. And she's right. They lay there in the morning light, in the apartment that was too small and too crowded and absolutely perfect. Outside, the city woke up, millions of people starting their days, chasing their dreams, building their lives. Inside, 3 people who'd found each other against all odds were doing the same thing, building a life, together, imperfect and complicated and absolutely real. Emma knocked on their door. Are we making pancakes or what? I'm starving. We're coming, Daniel called. Claire sat up, reaching for the shirt she'd stolen from Daniel months ago. Ready to face the day? With you? Always. They got up and joined Emma in the kitchen. Claire attempted pancakes while Emma provided commentary and Daniel tried to prevent any actual fires. It was chaotic and messy and nothing like the life Claire had planned. It was better. Later that morning, while Emma worked on yet another school project and Claire helped by looking up facts on her phone, Daniel stood in the doorway and watched them. His daughter and the woman he loved, laughing over something ridiculous, completely comfortable in each other's company. This was what showing up looked like, what choosing someone looked like, what love looked like when you stopped performing and started living. Claire looked up and caught him watching. What? Nothing. Just thinking. About? About how a week that started with a stranger asking me to be her fake date turned into this. Regret it? Not even a little bit. Emma looked up from her project. Are you two being mushy again? Absolutely not, Claire said. Yes, Daniel said at the same time. Emma rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. You're both weird. You're stuck with us, Claire said. I know. Emma went back to her project. Lucky me. And there, in a cramped apartment in a city full of strangers, 3 people who'd chosen each other built something that felt like forever. Not perfect, not easy, but absolutely, completely worth it.